up a dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember right. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your host, Dr. Dean Bertram.
Happy Thanksgiving, all my fellow weirdos and weirdettes. Thank you so much for joining me on your Thanksgiving night, or maybe you're listening or watching the show afterwards, either on YouTube or Facebook or X or one of the many audio podcast platforms that the audio-only version goes out on. Regardless, welcome. I hope you've enjoyed your Thanksgiving. I hope you're still enjoying it if you're watching me live at 9 p.m. Central. I hope you had your fill of turkey or pumpkin pie or whatever your favorite fare on Thanksgiving might be. I'm really happy and I'm very grateful. And I give thanks for all the wonderful people who are with me tonight. I also give thanks that I got to spend Thanksgiving with my mother, who's visiting from Australia, as well as my daughter, who unfortunately was a little unwell today. Otherwise, she would have been with her mother and her other grandparents. But we all got to just spend a nice quiet day together, the three of us. But I'm going to start bringing my friends on one by one, in the order they popped in on. Hello, Horace Smith, Professor Emeritus of Astronomy and Physics at Michigan State University. Greetings. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Dean. I'm doing pretty well today. So is a good day when you have a feast.
I had chicken pizza because I was planning on taking my mother out to dinner, and then my daughter was sick, so I was going to take her to a restaurant. So I ended up going to the gas station and buying a chicken pizza for dinner. But there you go.
We don't do as much as we used to, but enough to make it worthwhile.
Well, that's good. Did you get some turkey and pumpkin pie into you and all the good stuff?
Oh, we have turkey. I have left my pie until after the program.
Oh, treat for later.
I was already at the point where I was afraid I might doze off during the program. So,
gosh, that would have been that would not have been good. I'm going to bring on our other guests one by one, again in the order they first hit the studio in. And you only just briefly met the one and only Steve Ward, Mothman extraordinaire expert, as well as resident of Point Pleasant, as well as high strangeness expert. He, does his own show, does a bunch of different things. Hi, Steve. How are you? Great to have you here, man.
Doing very well. Great to see you guys.
How's
Hello.
Point Pleasant?
Point Pleasant is a little chilly. occasionally I will wake up here, and you'll even find snow once in a while, and I feel like I'm back in Michigan, and that's I don't like that. I mean, I don't mind Michigan. I just would prefer it in the summertime.
You would feel like you were back in Michigan if you were here today. It was like they talk about a white Christmas. It was a white Thanksgiving here. The snow was falling. It is freezing. I woke up this morning and it must be one of the coldest days of the year we've had so far. I mean, obviously, post January, but it was a cold day. My chicken's water was frozen solid. I was slipping and sliding inside the end of my gravel driveway where there's some cement. So it felt almost like Christmas more than Thanksgiving. And I'm going to add a mutual friend of all of ours, actually. She's friends of everybody here, who I haven't talked to for so long. And I'm so grateful that, Steve, you mentioned to her that we were doing this. And that's the one and only Susie Bastille.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Susie.
Hello.
It's actually nice and warm in Connecticut. Yesterday, I went for a nice walk in just a T-shirt.
Wow.
Wow.
Is it
Prepare for trouble.
60 degrees in November, yeah.
Wow. Did you get up to anything exciting today for Thanksgiving?
Well, we have a new kitten in the house.
Oh.
So that has been keeping my hands full. My older cat and her just discovered that they could play. So now my home is a racetrack. So I apologize for any background noise you might hear.
Well, that's fun. I would have just assumed it was the spooks and sprites of the season. This time of year, from Halloween all the way through Christmas, it's all kinds of strange things. How's the Pukwudgie research going too, Susie?
Good. I got out a lot this summer, a lot of different sites. I still can't say I've had my own encounter, but I took someone out with me one day and they got rocks thrown at them, which is, typical Pukwudgie behavior. So
and Sasquatch behavior, but who knows?
It could be, yeah.
Mightn't be that big a difference between all of these things sometimes, I think. And you and Steve do a show together sometimes at the moment still, is that right? You guys want to talk, do you guys want to talk about that a little bit?
I'm on with Susie as a co-host, and also Andy Mercer from across the ocean. He's actually the producer, and it's Paranormal UK Radio, and he's one of the principals that runs that website, that radio show.
Oh, excellent. And is it weekly or bi-weekly or monthly?
It used to be I used to love to say close out and say, I'll see you again in a fortnight. Well, it's not every other week. It's every time I get my tuchus in gear, get a show going.
You should use the injured cold sign out. I'll see you in time.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be a perfect one. What about you, Horace? What's happening in the world of? I know you still write regularly astronomy books, and you wrote a Lovecraft book, and you've written Civil War memoir. You've written books. You've written all kinds of things. What are you working on at the moment?
Well, most recently, aside from a small article on H.P. Lovecraft's interest in meteorology, which may or may not get published, I've submitted it. I've been looking into the history of telescopes, two particular telescopes, trying to track down the story of a woman in 19th century Portland, Maine, forgotten by history as far as I can tell, who was very interested in astronomy, had her own observatory, and at nighttime would hold astronomical soirees for the public.
Oh, wow.
And I think they tracked down over almost 2 centuries her telescope that she used, and it's ended up out in California in some modern person's hands that survived.
And
it made...
No, you go.
I was just going to say, it made me think that why not we have more? Do we not have more stories of haunted observatories? You think people sitting out in the dark, particularly in the old days before you sat in the room and looked at a computer, you're out in the dark with the sky. Maybe you should see, it would seem to be the perfect place to hear or see a ghost creeping up behind you. Your eye is fixed to the telescope. If you're taking a photograph in the old days, you couldn't take your eye off the guiding eyepiece. to turn around and see who's stepping behind you. But I know of very few such. There are a few such stories, but not many. It made me wonder whether the scientific bent of many of the observers was mentally chasing away the fave from the area. I don't know, or making it unpleasant to them, surrounded by the steel of the dome and the telescope.
That's a good point. I wonder if it's the science or if it's the people live there themselves. Somebody else who might have heard a spooky noise might have been more likely to put it within the context of a haunting, while perhaps they would not allow themselves to. That must just be the wind, or or somebody else, instead of saying that's the wind, they might have said it was an old castle they were in. That must be the ghost, the woman in white.
There is an old observatory in Ireland said to be haunted. And it's not a noisy ghost. It's supposed to be a rather dignified gentleman who's just checking on how things are going, but makes people feel uncomfortable that they're being watched from time to time. And Ireland seems quite the appropriate place for an observatory ghost.
Indeed, it does. Ireland's I'm always fascinated with all of the Irish law, whether it's the law of the dead or the fae or the various entities, the puka, whatever else prowls the land late at night. But it's all this phenomenon, like I was saying to Susie a minute ago, is probably in some way, I suspect, interconnected. Do you have any spooky stories for us, Steve, for this Thanksgiving? Is there anything in Point Pleasant around the Thanksgiving date, for example, which is worth mentioning?
A couple of weeks ago was the November 15th was the 59th anniversary of that original major sighting where the Garuda, the Mothman, chased the two couples out of what they call the TNT area on Route 62 into Point Pleasant. And so I just sometimes I go out there at the witching hour, almost the witching hour. 11 p.m. is about the time they saw this thing back 59 years ago. And when they were there, I guess it was a clear sky, nice star field. I went out there and parked on the very same dirt road where they encountered this thing. And by the way, last summer, I met Roger Scarberry in person, the guy who was driving the car that night. He gave Jeff Wamsley, who runs the Mothman Museum and who grew up there, and my employer, by the way, I work at the Mothman Museum part-time. He gave him a full-length interview, which will be in Jeff's next book. But I went out there just for the heck of it. It was a perfect night because it had a little bit of rain, plenty of thunder and lightning. And I was sitting there. I thought I might get some company out there. And I did look around to make sure that nobody was just parked out there ready to scare the hell out of me, because I was very open about the fact that I was going to be there. So that was just kind of fun. Now, I had some people, the guys, Joe and Ron from Wild and Weird, West Virginia, said if they'd known I'd been out there, they would have been there. And but they said they'll see me next year there. It'll be the 60th anniversary, so I expect to have a lot of company.
Oh wow, that must be spooky sitting out in that area all alone, like Keel would have all those years ago, watching the skies and watching the wood line and everything else, hoping to have something manifest. Do you hope to see something when you're there, as a part of you going?
No, I didn't. Well, I told people I was wearing adult diapers just in case. You got to be prepared. But no, I didn't really expect to see anything on the anniversary. Nowadays, it's right next to the fairgrounds, and it's across from the Farm Museum, and that's where we line up on Saturday night at the Mothman Festival to take people on tours through the dreaded TNT area. Guaranteed flyover of the Mothman. The Men in Black try to turn you away, and there's giant spider webs and a few cobbled together creatures with eyes lit up by indicator lights that I put up ahead of time. So it's a good time. So it's not quite as desolate as it used to be. I went down there my first time to Point Pleasant after I read John Keel's book in '75. In 1977, I was visiting some friends in Orchard Park, which is south of Buffalo. So I took an extra day off. I drove down Sunday night blind into Point Pleasant, armed with my Mothman Prophecies book and my map of the TNT area. found the Low Hotel by happenstance. And the next morning I went out there. Back then you could drive around the TNT area. Now a lot of it's kind of blocked off. But I have no idea where I was back at that time. I just drove around for a while, and I wouldn't ask anybody about the Mothman because it was only 10 years after the bridge tragedy. And while I don't believe there was any direct connection, it happened in the same space and time. So I didn't want to dredge up any bad memories. So, but it was the Old North Power Plant was still standing, and that's where they saw this thing shuffle into off the road when they first saw it there.
There must have been a lot less Mothman tourism too when you first went there, because that obviously long predates the film, long predates the Mothman Festival, the statue, all of these things. So yeah, I wonder what kind of reception you would have got if you'd started asking random people in diners and gas stations about the Mothman. I suspect not a fantastic one.
No, but I did get a reception when I was I pulled up in my green VW, had my 35 millimeter Minolta camera, was walking toward the Old North Power Plant. Somebody, a gentleman in coveralls and a hard hat, met me halfway and wondered what was I doing out there. So I was trying to be cool. I didn't say I was interested in the Mothman because the locals used to call it the bird. Right. So I said, well, I'd heard the stories about the bird and so forth. And the guy looks at me, he rolls his eyes and says, yeah, I remember. But he was very cool. He let me take pictures. He let me go into the power plant. He just wanted to make sure I didn't kill myself because it was kind of a treacherous place. A lot of kids had been in there climbing on the walkways and so forth and had fallen, hurt themselves and so forth. So he was just looking out for me.
I love how when both you and Susie, like behind you, there's cats constantly attacking that Mothman. I shouldn't even have said it was cats. I just happen to know you have cats. I'm assuming it, unless it's the Mothman himself. And Susie's eyes are occasionally darting around watching her cats. It's the night cats.
Dean, Susie and I were on another show once, kind of blocked off like this. And my little black cat, Lucky, crawled over my shoulder and went. And then as soon as he disappeared, Susie's cat showed up. Almost looked like they were going from portal to portal.
Yeah, both black cats too.
Yes, that's right.
That was on a Mothman panel with Richard Hatem.
Along with Richard Hatem that wrote the screenplay for the Mothman Prophecies.
Wow. When did you guys do that?
Not too long ago.
Is it on can I see it?
I got to introduce Richard Hatem at the Mothman Festival. It's his first time there. He'd been wanting to go forever. He lives in California. He told, he was on my show with Susie before too. He told about how he, developed the screenplay, and he told about the time John Keel came to visit him in California, and the way his kids were asking him all kinds of strange questions, the way kids will do. It was a great story.
Gosh, I miss Keel. Like I think I got to meet him briefly, and he was quite cranky at that stage, but still a fascinating human being. I recently visited Doug Skinner for the documentary I'm making.
Oh, great!
With my girlfriend and I went, and Brian Emmerich, one of the producers of the film, went. And Doug still has a considerable amount of Keel's papers because Doug, along with another friend, were, I guess, the people responsible for taking care of Keel later in life, and became, I think, the executors of his estate. So he has an awful lot of fascinating Keel material that just to hold it and to look at it was staggering, including a girlfriend book. Like Keel kept a girlfriend book with a list of all of his girlfriends in it.
Like a little black book?
Yeah, but kind of like, I guess, more of a history for himself with just like the girls. You see some of the personal materials of John's was, and I think he had screenplays John had written and all kinds of materials of books John had written that people don't know. I think in the broader space were written by John because he used pseudonyms for various kind of, I guess, softcore adult type books and other things which just didn't have Keel's name on. So that's a wonderful memory. I got to do that. Susie, tell me, do you know, are there any strange, there's so much history where you are in Connecticut or that kind of area, any weird Thanksgiving tales or historical legends around the period your part of the world?
Well, my family was at the first Thanksgiving, and we know my family is weird. But do you guys know what actually happened at the feast, as opposed to the tale we're told in school?
You mean the cartoon I watched wasn't true?
It very rarely is when it's about colonial history. But what had happened was they had not like planned to have a feast, the Pilgrims, and it was the Pokanoket tribe. The Pilgrims had gotten drunk and they started shooting their guns. And Massasoit, who was the sachem of the Pokanokets, thought that another tribe was attacking them. So they decided to go over and help them. Well, they got over there and they realized, oh, they're not being attacked. They're just drunk idiots. But, you know, everyone at that point was feeling pretty good. And they said, come on and eat with us, have something to drink. And that's how it started.
Sounds like a good time.
Some of my ancestors would have been dining with yours then on that occasion.
Oh, very good.
Whether your ancestor was pulling mine out from under the table, I don't know, but but it could have been. Well, through November, not Thanksgiving exactly, but there were French troops arriving in Lebanon, right? And they also, Rauschenbaugh's troops marched back through Windham. Was reminded of that in November 1782 on the return from Yorktown. Was reminded by the Ken Burns movie we just watched. And there are stories about them, as I recall.
Is that where that French soldier was executed in
Lebanon?
The
story goes that one of the soldiers in Lebanon, this is a troop of the Duc de Lauzun or something like that, was in charge of the Lebanon troops. The story goes that several of them deserted one time to go have a good time or something and were caught. And 3 or so were brought back, and one of them was executed as an example to the others. They might have wanted to get away because some of the French officers said that Lebanon was like Siberia in winter. And there were
This
stories.
is my hometown, by the way.
And I hear from time to time that there are stories about that executed soldier running around the Lebanon Green or something. But I've, not being a person from Lebanon, being from Willimantic and looking down at those Lebanon people, I don't know what the truth is of that matter.
Are there ghost stories there about that, Susie? Do you know?
There are ghost stories about everything. It's a very historical town. And here we have Alistair Pauly joining us, speaking of black cats. Where that soldier was executed, there is actually a sign, like a historical sign there. And that is right next to the house my grandmother grew up in, which if you've heard me tell the stories of the reoccurring nightmares I had about my great grandmother, it is right next to it. It was also during the Revolutionary War. It was kind of a hot spot. A lot of things went down there. It was the War Office was there. It was kind of like their home central. And George Washington stayed there. So there's even tales of George Washington's ghost, which I am not sure how that works. He was in so many places. He did not die there. He just stayed there once in a while. He kept a horse there. I would believe the horse haunting the town before George Washington himself. But it's New England. Yeah. We have those.
Lebanon, where she grew up, Governor Trumbull of Connecticut had his home there, which is why it was visited by so many important people. And I was very impressed, though I didn't admit it, to people from Lebanon, But I was very impressed to go out there and see the big green, which is much larger than a typical New England town green, and surrounded by history, the War Office, colonial houses.
The Beaumont House is my favorite.
Yeah, I was familiar with them all at the time, although they weren't all as fixed up as they are today. But it was actually parts of Lebanon were a little bit more run down at the time. And it seemed the perfect place for relics of the past to still be surrounding us. And old Victorian houses even seemed to be the perfect place for a ghost to appear. But alas, they never appeared for me. I went hunting around looking over the green, but no French soldier grabbed me by the ear and sent me back home. It was still a fun place to visit.
We have the wonderful Doug Hychek, who's also the head of the Untold Radio Network, producer of Monster Quest, which is a favorite of everybody's. Welcome, Doug. Thanks so much for dropping in.
Hey, how is everybody on this Thanksgiving Eve?
I'm good. I hope you are. I don't know if you've met these people. I'll do a quick intro.
I have not.
As far as Brady Bunch squares go, if you're looking at the screen, to Doug's right is, or to our right actually, to Doug's left is Horace Smith, who's Professor Emeritus of Astronomy and Physics at Michigan State University, and a very good friend of the show. But below and between me and Doug is Susie Bastille, who is also known as the Pukwudgie Whisperer, a fascinating researcher into all things Pukwudgie law and far more. And she co-hosts a show with the one and only Steve Ward, who is below Doug and Horace.
Hey, Steve.
Steve's an expert on the Mothman, and he works at the Mothman Museum. He runs his own podcasts. He's written a number of books and the like. Fascinating human being. So I'm glad you're all here with me.
Yeah, I've actually I know who Steve is. Excuse me, I just haven't met, and I know who Horace is, and I have not met Susie. So, but anyhow, it's an honor to meet you guys. Big honor.
What have you been up to, Doug?
Just did the normal. We went to. We were lucky. We went over to Yvette's sister's today and had a great Thanksgiving dinner. It was just wonderful. We didn't have to do one thing, so. We just came home and we're chilling. So,
gosh, we talked a little bit when you invited me last night to pop in on the other Untold show, briefly, but maybe people on this channel would like to know too what's happening with your latest documentary, Legend Meets Science 2, because I know there's a lot of anticipation about it. Maybe that's something you could talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, we are right now at a stage where we're probably 7/8 done filming. We really have one big shoot yet to do, but we're waiting on the forensics, and that's been just like pulling teeth between the funding that you have to get, because it's very expensive to do what we're doing, upwards of 10 to 20,000 per sample to get them tested and to get any kind of reasonable results back. But I did get a call recently from a professor who said one of the samples came back really promising, so that was nice. It's all they would tell me. That's it.
And that's the people who might know. I know most of our listeners and viewers probably do, but it's your follow-up documentary about Bigfoot,
right?
And you've been working on it for some time. The first film was a massive a massive success, and people have anxiously awaited this film for some time. Is there anything you can tell us about other than the evidence you're waiting on? Are there any hints you can give us about film?
Well, I don't know. It's such a huge doc. It's going to be 3 hours. And we're contemplating whether we want to release 3 parts or just, one big 3-hour doc. But I think it's going to be a huge bar raiser. Just like I think Legend Meets Science 1 was a good bar raiser. Right. There's a lot of people I've met, including Jeff, my co-host, who said that was the doc that got me interested in the topic.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best placed Bigfoot docs out there. It's something which I hear people talk about all the time. What else is going on, Doug, as far as...
Oh, not a whole lot. Really fascinated with your work, Steve. Do you work with Lon Strickler? Steve?
No. I actually have never met the gentleman.
Oh, really? Okay. But me and Yvette had I'm pretty sure it was some type of Mothman sighting back a number of years ago while we were driving home, totally unexpected from up northern Minnesota. And we're driving down 35W, the freeway, and we see in this beautiful, full moon night, clear sky, we see what looks like a wide, shiny thing in the sky near the moon. And we thought, what is that? It's some UFO. What are we looking at? And then it dropped straight down. We just literally saw this thing drop down to the freeway level and then head right towards my car. And it just kept coming at my car window and it got closer and closer. And finally, Yvette screamed and ducked. And then I waited as long as I could before I thought it was coming through the windshield. And I ducked, but I got a really good look at this thing. And she got a good look, too, to see, how wide the wings were. And we were looking at something that was, the wings were as wide as the freeway lanes, 2 lanes of the freeway. And it didn't flap its wings. It defied physics because the way it had its wings open when it dropped straight down could not be done physically. It didn't.
Was there any wind noise?
There was nothing. No, I mean, it was far enough away when it dropped because I'm driving 70 miles an hour towards it. And we saw this shiny thing. It was just kind of reflecting light. Dropped straight down like a spider on a web. They'll drop on a web and then just kind of halt instantly. That's what it did. And I mean, it defied physics. And that was a kind of an eye-opening moment for me. And I was actually producing Monster Quest at the time. And I thought, me and Yvette agreed not to tell anybody about this. Like nobody, except I did call my executive producer at History Channel, and I said, that Mothman thing you want me to do, which I didn't want to do because I felt there was no physical evidence. What am I going to test? Everything in Monster Quest was kind of science, sciencey, and we tested things. And I called him and I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I was convinced at that point that obviously what we saw was related.
Do you think, Doug, because I know you're very open to all kinds of different interpretations of Bigfoot and the like, but do you think that, Bigfoot, I think you lean to perhaps a physical explanation or a physical interpretation, obviously a science-based interpretation?
Yeah, of course, but I think that all things are physical. It doesn't mean that they don't leave and go into another dimension or God knows what.
You think
when it's here, it's physical.
Do you think the Mothman, for example, the entity you saw, which you said resembles perhaps a Mothman type encounter,
right?
You think that might be a different order of nature than a Bigfoot, or do you think they're in the same?
It may have been in the same thing, because I do think if it would have hit our windshield, it would have gone through it. It would have killed us. It sure looked physical when when we're looking at it, and I got to see this thing in the face, and all I remember is kind of a gargoyle-y type humanoid face. That's what I remember. And I know the Mothman doesn't really resemble that, but it seems to resemble some of these winged humanoids that people report,
But with no sound at all when it actually went by you.
No, I didn't hear anything. No. I'm in a car with the windows up and didn't hear a thing. No whistling, no sounds, nothing.
Yes.
Steve, how do you think that, Steve, that Doug's experience or encounter fits in with other Mothman reports that you've looked at?
It sounds like some of the characteristics of what people were reporting. I think we do have to be a little bit careful. People have seen and reported a lot of winged entities, winged humanoids, maybe even apparitions. I wouldn't categorize them all as the Mothman per se. I mean, you had the Wisconsin man bat. I think in the early 2000s, you had the Houston Batman, and I think in the 50s, it looked like some guy wearing a suit. I mean, I don't know how to explain that, but a lot of people. There's only one person that said that I know of that said that they saw the face, and that was Connie Carpenter. She was 18 when she was driving past the Mason County golf course, and this is just a few days after the sightings opened up. And she saw this thing take off straight up like a helicopter. Like Doug said, the wings didn't always flap when the people, sometimes they did, but sometimes it just took off straight like a helicopter, wings not moving. She saw the red eyes, flew over her car. She's one of the ones that Keel, when he came down in early December and they gathered all these people together, she's one of the ones he believed right away because she had a case of conjunctivitis. Although she did not see a strange light or a UFO, she saw a winged creature or apparition. And the thing about the Mothman, people, while generally they reported the same thing, roughly humanoid, 6-7 foot tall, red glowing eyes, 10-foot wingspan, the behavior wasn't always the same. Keel thought it had left some kind of footprints by the Old North power plant. A lot of people that experienced it had an outbreak of poltergeist phenomena. Keel even got a couple reports of people that saw it in close proximity where it seemed to be making some kind of a mechanical or humming noise. There's another couple that said they saw it manifest in their bedroom. They were evangelical Christians. They were going off to a faraway country to be missionaries. And they had not read the news. And this thing, classic Mothman, seemed to manifest in their bedroom and then dissipate. It wasn't until they came back years later and they saw the old newspapers that they thought that's what they saw. Other people think that maybe they just saw some other kind of apparition that wasn't directly connected, even though it was all happening at the same time. So it's very difficult to, I mean, I've talked to several of the original witnesses. They really did experience something extraordinary, but I really don't know what it was. And John Keel was never sure. He used the term ultra-terrestrial to kind of get away from the ET idea, but he would use ultra-terrestrial interchangeably with elemental, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, what I do know, Steve, it did not look like the creature behind you. It didn't have red eyes. It didn't have the high ears. It had ears that seemed a little pointed, but they were very much on the side of its head.
I have to, full disclosure, this behind me, my studio background is a shower curtain with a very, very stylized version of the Mothman. The Mothman was, if you look at the original sketches that the Scarberries and the Mallets made of this thing, it just kind of looks like an oversized owl. The eyes are kind of sunken down.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the Mothman behind me is either, I don't know if he's cooler or sillier, but he's not quite the Mothman.
Well, all I know is I saw something that defied physics. And you got to realize we saw it in the headlights of my car. I was driving a 2008 Corvette that I had just gotten, and this thing it was lit up like day in my bright, HID headlights. And it was low. I mean, it was wind chill level as it came towards us. So it was.
So it was not self-luminous. It was something.
No.
It
was just
outside light to be able to.
Yeah,
see.
it had shiny skin-like wings. So I would put it more in the bat category.
Doug, I don't ever see anything. I'm just a guy that hears stories from people that do.
I think Susie had a question for Doug or a point to make.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So other kind of cryptid or entities have, I want to call it like regional differences. Like I'm thinking little people, like here we have puckwudgies, Central America, they have duendes. With Bigfoot, you have, the skunk ape in Florida and the Yeti. So, but all winged humanoids, we always want to call Mothman. But maybe there's,
of course.
I think we need some new names for them because you do seem to have like groupings of different sightings of winged humanoids.
I think, a winged humanoid is probably our best description. I do know that it caused Yvette a ton of trauma to this day. She will not drive anywhere with me if we're going to have to go through the woods at night. It doesn't even matter if it's on the freeway. She won't go. And I have tried everything. And she has to make sure that we're like, hey, leave before it gets dark. I mean, it was traumatic.
Well, if Keel was onto something, if these things are manifesting from some source or other dimension or transmogrifications of energy, perhaps many of these things are coming from the same source, but they may manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
And also he talked about confabulation. Sometimes people are having experiences that if a third party could be outside looking in, they may not see the same thing going on. They may not even see anything, but the person might be experiencing. He thought some of these things were illusory, but not necessarily hallucinations. So it's very difficult to get a hold on what's really going on.
Well, I can tell you, thank God that Yvette was there, because I would think I was crazy if she wouldn't have been there, because we definitely compared stories and they're definitely exact.
Did you have any physical effects? I know Steve before was talking about people who experienced Mothman and had physical effects. Did you have anything like that, or?
No, we didn't have any physical effects. I did the Monster Quest episode on winged humanoids, found another two guys, I think it was a father and son, that had the same thing happen in Winona, where it dived at their car, came towards their windshield, then they pulled over and they said they were either both vomiting, as I remember.
That was in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, right. Winona, right across the border.
Just La Crosse side.
Linda Godfrey investigated that. And she said the same thing. They got extremely ill afterwards. It was just kind of, I think, a big ugly bat, right? That kind of brushed across the. I mean, it was huge, but it wasn't a classic Mothman.
Yeah, I don't think we're dealing with a Mothman, but for lack of better description, something that obviously can defy lots of laws of physics, and had wings, and it was big, and it was. I can't even fathom how big it was.
May I ask Horace a quick question?
Sure.
Horace, I was checking you out on Facebook. You live in East Lansing?
I do indeed.
Is the Curious Bookshop still there?
It is.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It is there. Ray Walsh is getting pretty old.
Yeah.
This is a used bookstore in East Lansing. With delightful things to find from time to time in it.
I have spent. I used to drive there. I used to have to keep putting quarters in the parking meter so I didn't get a ticket. But he would let me go downstairs to check out his pulp magazines, and he would just have all kinds of great obscure stuff. A lot of my books, my collection, came from the Curious Bookshop, thanks to Ray Walsh.
Did you get some of your amazing stories collection from there? They got on Ray.
I think I got more of those. To tell you a brief story here, there used to be a great 2-story, dirty secondhand bookstore in Hamtramck, Michigan. Hamtramck back then was a predominantly Polish. It was a captive suburb in Detroit. And oh man, I used to. I wasn't making much money, but I would take whatever I had, and I would go there on the weekends, and I get permission to go upstairs, where he had rows and rows of pulp magazines, old science fiction. He had some of the hero pulps. I found some original Ray Bradbury stories in some of them, and even an original Conan story from a Weird Tales from 1935. I was in seventh heaven. Once in a while, you'd find maybe a digest Doc Savage or Shadow, and so I got many of my amazing stories came from there.
Now, Doug, I was going to ask you: is this what the thing you look like? Did it look like that at all? That's the British version of the Mothman prophecies, and your description with the gargoyle type face and the little eyes. Maybe.
Yeah, that's I can't see it real good, but the wings sure look right. Except the wings were more, when we saw it, they were just straight out. But you could see where they had the bat, the joints of it like a bat, where they were kind of angled up, and definitely had skin stretched on its wings. Yeah, that's amazing.
A very gargoyle picture.
Where can I read that article? That was
that's just the English copy of the Mothman Prophecies. And funny enough,
I see.
When I was a kid, and John Keel obviously probably altered the direction of my life, as I've talked about a number of times, but I was at a friend's house at a sleepover when I was maybe, 10 or 11. And for some reason, he had that book on his bookshelf. I think he probably had gotten it from a parent or something. I don't think and I remember just seeing it and being I never read it and being fascinated by the image. And years later, when I was visiting America and staying with people in Atlanta in my early 20s, that's when I first found a copy of the Mothman Prophecies. And I always thought, that looks like that book I saw all those years ago. And sure enough, it was the book. And then later, when I got multiple copies of the Mothman Prophecies, I worked out that was that book I saw all years ago. So I'd had a kind of a prescient encounter with the book, a decade before it.
I wonder why the description, the physical description, changed for the English edition.
I think it's just a very stylized version. I don't think they had. It doesn't resemble what people were seeing at all. In fact, there's been a reprint that I'm not sure is legitimate. It's from, they reprinted the 1991 edition of the Mothman Prophecies. The only difference in the book is that the afterword is different. The original cover was the great Frank Frazetta cover with the again, another stylized version of Mothman. Mm-hmm. But what they did, they reprinted it, titled it The Year of the Garuda, which was the original title John Keel wanted. Right. But the editor said, nope, we're not going to do that. We'll do the Mothman Prophecies. And then they took the image from the UK version, but then changed the face of the creature a little bit. They just kind of tweaked it. So, but that's how that happened.
That statue in Point Pleasant is kind of based on the Frazetta.
It does, yeah. It has to be. I know that Bob Roach, who did the statue, interviewed a lot of people, but when you compare the two images together, you can see the influence there, I think.
Yeah, it's funny how art then, it might be different to the original experience, but then perhaps the art affects people's later interpretations of their own experiences. I think it's
well, there are many Mothman T-shirts, and you just can't have the same image on every T-shirt, or you're just not going to move them.
That's a good point. So does anybody have any? It's funny because Halloween's loaded with obviously monster stories and ghost stories and the like. And Christmas was traditionally a time, at least in the UK, where ghost stories were a part of the season, and we tend to have forgotten that. But obviously, A Christmas Carol is a classic example of how the importance of ghost stories at Christmas used to be a part of the season. I'm unaware, as somebody who's a relatively new import to the United States, I'm unaware of any creepy Thanksgiving stories or traditions. Are there any?
I don't remember any, but there was between Thanksgiving time, well, before the modern Thanksgiving time, but between that time of year before Christmas, in the year 1719, there was alarm and excitement in New England. And it's a story having to do with Cotton Mather, not everyone's favorite Puritan. And a night came in December 11 in the old calendar, one of the longest nights of the year. The night fell, and lights began to appear all over the sky over Boston and New England that frightened people. The flashing lights, the people in the sawmills said the lights took on a bloody and threatening, ominous glow, and they were quite alarmed. And nobody knew, many people didn't know what it was. And Cotton Mather was one of two people who tried to explain what had been seen in the days following the event. And both he and the alternative fellow agreed it was the Northern Lights. And they had not been seen in New England much before because this was the end of the Maunder Minimum, a long spell when the northern lights were largely absent because solar activity had been very quiet. And I don't know if you all saw, I think Dean did, the northern lights when they appeared earlier in the month.
Mm-hmm.
If they were clear, they were quite spectacular. And you can see how awe-inspiring they could be, but also how frightening they could be if you were unfamiliar with it. And Cotton Mather wrote a book entitled "A Voice from Heaven," indicating that even though what had been seen was a natural phenomenon, it could still have a supernatural meaning, a religious meaning in his interpretation. And after that, the auroras have been coming back to New England, and they still inspire awe, but they don't fright people as much as they did on that first occasion. It shows that things that are understood at the time, I think that is your old friend Jason's view, things that might have a natural explanation in one sense, but one that's totally misunderstood at the time, can be very frightening to people. And that's why I was asking the question about the Mothman, just to see if it seemed at all like it was something that was explainable with modern physics. And I think the answer was no, it didn't behave as we would expect ordinary physical objects to behave. So that has to fall into that category. But what the answer is, I don't know. But we'll need I don't know. We have a Cotton Mather right now. I can't see John Keel quite in the same role as the Puritan divine, explaining to us what was going on. But perhaps his own view of himself was a little more along those lines, but I can't really say.
So you can read about that story and more in Horace's book, Will Manic Skies.
Oh, thank you for putting that up.
I have that book. I didn't make the connection. How about that?
Yeah, that's a good book, Horace. It's interesting because I mean, even more modern Christian theologians like C.S. Lewis in The Discarded Image suggest that once we used to be able to reconcile a spiritual understanding of the universe with even natural phenomena, perhaps the way that you were talking about Cotton Mather interpreting the northern lights to mean multiple things. And I think that's one of the reasons the things that we're interested in the paranormal, why they grab us so much today, because there's been this kind of demystifying of reality through science and through our, day-to-day lives, working in an office cubicle or just binging Netflix and driving between the two and rinse and repeat. I think there's a real desire deep within us to find mystery again in things. And perhaps that's why sometimes people project their own idea of mystery onto natural phenomena. But I do think there's something weirder out there, and I do think there's something strange out there. And I think that's why networks like the Untold Radio Network and other shows in this space fulfill an important part of the broader cultural tapestry, because people know that there's something more, or they hope there's something more meaningful than their day-to-day lives. And perhaps this type of the year where things get colder and we get to be more reflective and get to hang out inside more is a time where we share more stories like this.
Dean, speaking of stories, besides your documentary, I understand that you have a new work in progress. Can you give us any more hints on what it will be?
That's nice of you to bring up, Horace. Yes, as many people know, I have a short documentary called The Shaver Mystery on the Fest circuit at the moment. In fact, if people want to watch it who haven't seen it yet, been to any of the couple dozen Fest screenings it's had, it's screening at San Francisco's Another Hole in the Head in early December, but that festival also has an online component. So even if you're not in San Francisco, you can go to Another Hole in the Head, just Google that festival in San Francisco, and you can get festival passes to watch films online. So you can actually watch The Shaver Mystery online, I think for all of December, through Another Hole in the Head. And that's part of my bigger documentary about Ray Palmer and Richard Shaver and the creation of modern UFO belief called The Man Who Invented Flying Saucers, which I've been working on now for a few few years. But to answer your question about my other thing, I did. I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. I guess it's as mysterious as the things we were just talking about. But I had this real desire to do a very specific Halloween short horror movie, and everything fell into place. So I took advantage to do it. I think it's also was a part of me wanting to have a film still on the festival circuit next year when I'll be working on the feature, and the Shaver Mystery would have done its dash on the festival circuit. But I've been making this film. I co-wrote it with my daughter. She's fascinated with birds, and she's interested in ASL, which is American Sign Language. And she, like all kids, likes Halloween. So those three things, birds, ASL, and Halloween, are a big part of the short film, which I hope will, I think it will play well on the festival circuit because it's such a weird, strange, little unique horror movie. I think it'll be on the circuit this year, so people should be able to see. It's called, I haven't given the title away at all yet. I'm going to give it away now. It's called Halloween Bird is the name of the film.
Can't wait.
Thanks, Horace. Thank. And now I've given it away. So I haven't given away the whole plot. Anything. That's the most I've ever said about that movie to anybody. Not forget about publicly to anybody. So
You're gonna have to give me a sneak preview, Dean. I want to see it.
I'll give you. It should be done within about the next month because I'm so busy with Midwest Weird Fest and a Night of Horror Festival work now. I have to really tie it up. And so I'll send you a sneak screener.
And Weird Fest is in March.
Yeah, in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, the first weekend, which I think this year we run from Thursday the 5th to Sunday the 8th, including those dates. You should come, Doug. You're not that far away. You'd have a great time.
No, I'm not. It seems like every time in March, one year I broke my leg. Another year I had COVID during that time. It's like, hopefully maybe I have a March where it's nothing weird going on to come to Weird Fest. So
I think you'd enjoy it. I'd love to do one of your films one day as well. If Legend Meets Science ever tease up with the release or something, it'd be so much fun to do that there with you as well.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
Everybody should come, by the way.
Very cool.
You're all welcome to come.
Yeah, and I'd love to get you on, Steve, and you on, Horace, for obviously different reasons, but it'd be really cool.
You should do a Pukwudgie episode with Susie.
Oh, yeah, the Pukwudgie. I don't know.
Susie, tell Doug a little bit about
Thank God I haven't seen one of those.
Tell Doug
to me, because let me say one thing. Small is way creepier and way scarier than big.
Can we give the same energy to human women that are small too? Be scared of us as well.
I'm talking about little 2-foot creatures.
My girlfriend's below 5 foot, I think, and she when she gets mad with me, man, yes, she can be scared.
Oh boy,
she's very sweet. The rest of the
time. I think if I saw a Pukwudgie, some little what are they, 2-3 feet tall?
Depends on the area and who you're talking to, but yeah, around there.
That would be chilling. Very chilling. I should put you in touch with somebody I just interviewed that saw probably one of those. And the story is fantastic. It was witnessed by numerous people, and it's really good. That's quite an encounter. I'll put you in touch with them.
Appreciate it. I'm intrigued.
Where was that, Doug? What part of
it happened in Minnesota. And literally at a boat launch. Up in the Grand Rapids kind of general area, in a heavily forested area. But apparently, I don't want to give it away, but you should interview him. He's very limited on his time. He's pretty busy. He's a teacher, but you can take his story to the bank. It's quite a story.
Are Pukwudgies all over the country usually, Susie, or are they more native to the northeast? Or
so different tribes have different words for them. Pukwudgie is the Algonquin word for it, so that's like the northeast U.S. and southeast Canada. But little people are all over. Every culture in the entire world has little people stories.
I think we talked once back in the day, Susie, about one not that far from me in Medford, Wisconsin. That you said that you pointed me at a little person story there, if I recall.
Yeah, I believe that
It was
one.
Stratford, maybe. Maybe it was Stratford, Wisconsin. It was
Stratford sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A woman had seen little people run across the road, I believe was that story, wearing blue.
Do these things often like shake bushes or do anything like that? Have you ever heard that?
They'll do anything that's annoying. In my experiences, knocking on sides of houses, throwing rocks, stealing things, any kind of mischief, that just anything to annoy you. So
Okay.
shaking a bush would not surprise me in the least bit.
Yeah, as I remember, it was making some weird sounds and shaking this bush and shaking this bush. And then when this gentleman would approach the bush, it would stop. And then he would back off and it would start shaking it again. It just kept doing that. And then finally it came out, exposed itself, and took off. So, but yeah, you'll have to interview him.
Absolutely.
He wants to tell his story, but he doesn't want to tell it to people that don't believe him.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
He's never told this story to public. I begged him to. And he came on and did a members only show, not even a public show. And, but he's just really sincere. You know, it really shook him up.
I often wonder if these things are because Pukwudgie seems to be very native to North America, but then there's obviously similar things. There's little people all over the planet, like you were talking before, Susie, about the Duende, and there's fairy faith in Ireland, and every country has their little people. I wonder if it's not something similar, and it just takes a cultural trope wherever it happens to be cited. I don't know.
Well, it's like people. Like you have Europeans, you have Asian people, you have African people. I mean, it's just different flavors of the same thing in different parts of the world. Is how I feel about it.
Because I've heard some people in North America, I think, who did I have on recently? Maybe Monica Rollins was talking about it, about having had experiences with some things which would have been more traditionally thought of to be European type fair folk here, like, little people here. But I wonder if that's just then the culture that the person's been experienced to kind of interacting with whatever the phenomenon is, because that begs the question, did the fair folk come with colonizers over to America, or do they teleport here? Or
they were here before we were, for sure. There is existing tribal lore and stories about them. But I mean, there is something to say, that the paranormal might present itself in a way that's palatable to you. Like, as an example, there was a UFO sighting in New Haven Colony. So it's before America was a country. That was a huge ship that was in the sky, like a literal ship, a sailing ship with masts. So, at that time, what we think of as a UFO would have made no sense to them. And today, if somebody saw a big ship in the sky, that would be absolutely wild. But so it may just be presenting itself in a way that we would expect it to.
Yeah, that makes.
I was going to ask.
You go, Horace.
A similar point that it's been a long time since I've read Cotton Mather's Wonders of the Invisible World. And I wondered if anything like the Pukwudgies appear there, seen through the view of Cotton Mather. Do you remember?
Not that I recall, no. I do know that the Puritans came in and called Pukwudgies demons. So if they had referred to them, they would not have called them Pukwudgies. So maybe I should go back and read it and read between the lines on that.
Yeah, demons. They did have belief in demons, as I recall, but I can't remember the constitute.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they called them like tiny devils or something along those lines, but like the general idea of a demon.
Now, when you were talking about ships in the skies, Susie, I couldn't help but think of course, one of Steve's favorite topics. I know the Great Airship, and I know you've written about that as well in your work, Horace. When people saw it was essentially America's first well-known UFO flight before we had the term UFO in the 1896 to 1897, where this enormous, heavy, apparently heavier than aircraft, traveled across the skies of America in the period just before heavier than air travel, and it was carried in every newspaper of the day. But it presented itself then in a Jules Verne-esque, and we might say steampunk-esque way now, the way people imagined that a heavier than aircraft would look at that time period, and that seemed to be presenting within the cultural expectations of the day, just as we have tic-tacs today presenting within the cultural expectation of what we expect to see in the heavens. Or in the 1950s, we had disc-shaped craft, reflecting what we expected from science fiction tales of the day.
That's certainly true.
I think it inspired Jules Verne when he wrote Master of the World and Robar the Conqueror. I think he was inspired by the reports in the newspapers of the airships.
There were many reports from Michigan as one of
Yes.
the places that they flew over. Some of them were just lights in the sky at night. And it kind of moved, these reports kind of moved across the country, partly following, I suppose, the newspaper reports. But they were there. And then in 1909, when there was an airship again seen over Michigan, that time over Connecticut, just before Christmas, it was seen, interpreted as kind of a monoplane. And by that time, of course, the Wright brothers and other early airplanes were around. And the reports that was flying over New England just before Christmas was more like a mysterious airplane credited to a mysterious inventor named Tillinghast, whose name was also used later on by H.P. Lovecraft in a story. So that the reports changed with time. During World War I, there was a strange object, which may have been part of a UFO, but may have been Northern Lights as well. And they described it as a dirigible moving through the skies at the time that the German dirigibles were flying over England. People see what they're ready to see, I guess.
I just so disagree with you on that, Horace.
Really?
Oh my God, 1,000%.
Okay, let's hear.
We got to have a debate sometime.
Oh, I'd love to.
And the reason I do is because many people with that opinion have not seen anything. And that's
it doesn't mean they haven't seen that these are not things, but what they see is how they see it.
Don't agree.
Is dependent
Don't agree
upon
even a little bit. I know people can be, brain can be tricked, but when I'm looking at my pop can, it's a pop can. It's not anything else.
Can I just suggest something though, Doug? Because I agree with both of you. There's a fascinating piece by Greg Bishop, who I think is one of the greatest thinkers writing in the UFO field today. And he said things similar to what Keel and Valet and others have said before him. But it's a piece in the late Robbie Graham. He was the editor, a book called UFOs Framing the Debate, filled with a number of interesting essays. And in Greg Bishop's essay in that book, he talks about, and this is just related to UFOs, but I myself think it can span out to the rest of the broader paranormal or Fortean space as well. And that is, he suggested that there might be a co-creation process going on, that whatever the phenomenon is, which he thinks is real, is independent of us, that somehow we co-create what we see with that phenomenon. And
okay, but you're not finishing your thought, Dean. And your thought really is you're saying the world's a matrix. That's really what you're
Yeah,
saying.
no, I absolutely, I think too.
But you're not finishing that sentence, and
No.
you need to when you state that argument.
No, I'm happy. I'm happy to finish it because it's something I agree with. I do think.
Right. I mean, the world can be very much, and I've seen evidence of that too. For instance, almost every time I go to the end of my block to take a right or a left, there's tons of people crossing the road right in front of me. And every time. And I look down, I could see 1.5 miles that way and 1.5 miles. There's nobody. And why is it? Every time I go to that damn intersection, and sometimes there's up to 15 people crossing. And I'm like, this is not possible. And so everybody I know now is taking notice. They're all reporting the same thing. It's like all these strange, suddenly there's all these people there. Okay. I could tell you stories of glitches and something. You can call it the Matrix or whatever, glitches in time. But I so strongly disagree that to me, it's like the biggest insult you could give a witness. It's just a massive, you might as well just punch him in the face and call him a liar. I interview witnesses.
I disagree with you.
It's not lying. It's being human.
No. Well, let me finish. Let me finish. But to sit there and go, well, it's because we expect certain things and, whatever, we're seeing what we want to see and blah, blah, blah. No, everybody goes, what in the hell am I looking at? You can't place it. You don't know what you're looking at until you see it up close enough in good enough light. And then you go, wow.
It's actually, especially when you're looking at something, you have no idea what you're looking at because your brain is going to want to fill it in with something it does.
Well, I'll tell you an exact story where I thought a Bigfoot was a moose once. We were driving, me and Yvette were driving south on 169 near the Mille Lacs Lake shore. And we see along the side of the road what we think is a moose waving its antlers back and forth. And we're like, wow, that's weird. What is that moose doing so close to the road? And it's not walking. It's just, so as we get closer, we don't realize the antlers are arms and they're waving. And then as we get closer, we can see fingers. We both see fingers. We're not talking. This is after we had our experience. We could see the long hair coming off the arms. And then we realized it's a Bigfoot because it's way too big to be anything else. I mean, it was a really big, looked like a big male, had its back to us. We could see the long hair coming off the arms. We immediately exchanged we both saw what we saw. It's no different than seeing a bloody house. There's a blue house.
Temporal manifestation.
I don't believe in any of that garbage.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just garbage. I mean, all respect, Steve. I absolutely respect. But you made a statement to me when I've never seen anything. Exactly. So you're prejudiced. You're both very prejudiced. And you need to open up your minds. And I hope to God.
Doug, I think we're just both very enlightened.
I guess my view was a little bit different than that exactly. I was saying that when you saw the moose and the Bigfoot, you had known you'd seen moose before.
Well, of
you
course.
had some idea of humanoids before.
Well, I was looking for what is it.
Suppose you had never seen either.
And if the sighting would have ended right there, I would have thought we just saw a moose.
That I was saying,
but it wasn't. But it wouldn't be imaginary.
Seen a moose, you had never heard of a moose before. You had no idea that such a thing existed. How would you have interpreted it? And that's a harder question.
Some strange creature,
to answer.
And I would have said I saw something strange but alive.
Right, and I think, but would you liken it?
But I could have drawn it. And I could also swear I didn't imagine it.
Well, we have some kind of progression then over time in the nature of UFOs. It's got to be either in the interpretation by the viewer, or it has to be a real progression over time.
Look, I've been researching this topic for 40 some years now, and researching it, and for many of those years professionally. Like, I'm getting paid to do it. So I'm doing it a lot. It's like all day, all night. I deal with witnesses every day. I deal with forensic evidence every day. I deal with pictures every day, video. I deal with a lot of the pareidolia, the circle pictures and all that kind of crap. Yeah, of course. I've got Bigfoots all over my shower, and it's just ceramic tile, but you can find. I get all that. I'm not ignorant to all that. But to say that what like me and Yvette saw together was imagined by predetermined God knows
not
what.
Imagined. That's not what we're saying.
It's just not. We saw a strange creature neither of us can identify.
Can I just say something quickly, Doug? Because I certainly don't. I would never suggest that you didn't actually see that, but I think there is a tradition which probably Steve and perhaps Susie and myself subscribe to, and Horace is, I think, in a slightly different camp. But John Keel would never have suggested, for example, that people didn't see the Mothman. Jacques Vallée would never suggest people didn't see the Mothman. Greg Bishop would never suggest people didn't see the Mothman. But the suggestion is that these things interact with our reality in a very different way than perhaps your car and your garage does. Mind you, there's physicists who say there's no reason your car and your garage couldn't slip through your door anyway if the conditions were right and something very different could happen. I think you were closest to it when you talked about simulation theory, just as you've had experiences that suggest that reality mightn't be exactly the nuts and bolts style that most of us would like to think it is.
we may find out, Dean, everything is an illusion.
Yeah, and so perhaps I think when people have I think the great value of the paranormal mightn't be in us and when I say the paranormal, again, I mean it in the unknown, the 40 in the broader sense, from cryptids to UFOs to ghosts to everything else. Maybe the great value in it isn't the existence of a Bigfoot or the reality of visiting extraterrestrials or the life after death and your great Aunt Gertrude is haunting the family estate. It might be that these things, and you might say glitch in the matrix, Doug, because that's a very good analogy you use, but maybe these things tell us something more about reality in a broader sense. Maybe these are things that somehow point to a deeper, stranger reality that we're all invested in, but don't understand what it is yet. So I think that's the value in what we talk about, that somehow it's a peek into a bigger
where I think it's very offensive to people is when people who have never witnessed anything odd in their life start preaching about they start using these words, misidentifying, confabulation, blah blah blah. It's just, you're not doing the whole world any good. You're basically shutting people up is what you're doing. You're going to get less data. You're going to have less data to look through, and it's the stuff I fight every day trying to get stories out of people. And the reason they don't want to say those stories is because they don't want to be accused of confabulating.
That's not. But the confabulation is coming from the source. If you had a third party out there watching what was going on, they may see something totally different than what the person believes they're experiencing.
Not really sure what you just said, Steve.
It's not just making up stuff. It's the way the phenomena seems to present itself sometimes.
Well, that's not confabulation. That's it's something's manifesting. So they're seeing what's really there or what's been manifested, not them.
Not necessarily.
See, what's really weird is it's as if so many skeptics blame the witness. And that's when my blood pressure goes up.
We're talking about two different things.
Look, I listen to people every week blaming witnesses, and it gets so old. Like the witnesses made it up because they wanted to be famous, wanted to make money, wanted this, wanted that. They're imagining, they read a sci-fi book the night before, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And it's just such an insult.
Well, I think John Keel talked about the silent contactees, the people who'd had experiences and didn't even want to talk about it. And I think they're the things that Steve's particularly interested in. I think perhaps the best example or the best analogy for my perhaps position on this is one that Jacques Vallée wrote about. And he said, imagine that you're in a cinema and you're watching a film in front of you, right? And it's a wonderful romance, and it's moving, and the soundtrack swells, and you walk out of that cinema. You're not thinking about the technology that really gave you that experience. The technology was sitting behind you in the dark in the projection booth. And if another audience went to that cinema after you, or another person, and they changed the film and they projected a horror movie instead, that person might come out and going, I just saw the most horrifying movie of my life. You both were exposed to the same technology, but the image that was projected in front of you or thrown in front of you was different. But the experience was actually the technology, or the reality of the experience, was exactly the same, but the emotional and the visual and the audio results of what you experienced were very different. And perhaps I think that's when I was talking about the co-creation theory. Greg Bishop goes even deeper and suggests that maybe we're influencing what's being shown to us in the projection booth.
Well, obviously we have to relate to things. I'm just not sure that's a good analogy for what I hear every week. It's just not a good analogy. A great analogy is people generally see what they see unless they're lying. It's, they don't always know what it is, but they can describe it, they can draw it, they can whatever. I just don't think that.
But there's something.
I saw something back in the 70s that I had never seen anything until like the late 90s of something similar. And I saw it first. And that was a hooded figure at the end of my bed, just standing there staring at me. And then all of a sudden, like in the 90s, I read, oh, people are seeing hooded figures. So I didn't have anything that would preempt me from imagining that. Now, did I imagine it? It's possible, but I didn't lie about seeing it. It may not have been real. It could have been a dream. It could have been whatever. But I didn't lie about it. I didn't make it up.
But the progression of the phenomena, Horace touched on this. The UFO phenomena, call it what you want, has manifested differently over the centuries and the decades, and that's where the co-creation may come in. A lot of the UFO phenomena was always seemed to manifest or be experienced a little bit ahead of our technology. The airships were ahead of our technology. Then you had the Foo Fighters. Way back, you had just strange lights in the sky, which were interpreted as witches carrying their lanterns or fairy lights. But then over time, and then we had the modern day UFO era, where you're seeing these egg-shaped craft or saucer craft.
Yeah, but that's still a weak argument, because the guy in the 1800s would have still drawn it the same as the guy in 2000.
I know, but there's this progression where it's not static. And it suggests, as Dean was talking about, that there may be.
But you're
some
suggesting
kind of
words, not. Yeah, but you're only suggesting words. I'm just suggesting, what does it look like, And I don't think that's changed from now until the beginning of time.
Right. One of the problems with the going back in time is, if you go back to the airship sightings of the 1870s or 1890s. You say, what did the people see? What did they draw? Well, we have what the newspaper artists drew.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have what the witness drew. So there, we have what's reported in the newspapers. There wasn't a UFO team going out and investigating and drawing pictures at the time. So one would have to ask, in this interpretation, is it the people who are reporting, who in the past are not necessarily the actual observers, who are inserting this progression, or whether is it the actual phenomenon?
Yeah, and it was secondhand for sure, I'm just talking about today, modern day. Obviously there's all sorts of garbage and stuff, but I just hate it when people who have never witnessed anything kind of put everybody in the same bucket and say, they're all just kind of confabulating. Well, okay, it's because your life, you need to get out more and look up more, and you need to go in the woods more, and probably you will have some experience. Come on up to Snellgrove with me for a night.
You should. I'll come up to Snellgrove with you.
Well, yeah, if you got $1,800, I'll bring anybody up there. It will change their life. But that's the kind of thing people need to get out. I've just, and you can understand after doing this for 40 years and having to coax information out of people and beg to get it, even just on a 1-to-1, let alone going public with it or reporting it. And it's because they've been just battered by the media. They've been laughed at by the news. Every time I see a newscast about UFOs, Bigfoot, there's always the giggle at the end. And it's just terrible.
I think the Keelian or the Valayan approach, though, isn't dismissive. Like both of those men, for example, when they dealt with witnesses, they were very thoughtful and they were able to get details that other people wouldn't have. Like Keel understood something that nobody else understood who was doing.
He was an amazing investigator.
Yeah, he would know how to ask, well, did you have any other weird experiences? A UFO investigator would just go there and want to know about the UFO. The Bigfoot researcher would want to go there and just know about the Bigfoot. The ghost investigator would go there and just want to know the ghost. Keel would know to ask, is there any other strange experiences that happened to you? And then often that's when he would find out, oh, yeah, it's funny because a week later I saw a strange creature in my yard, or it's weird because the cupboards were rattling in my kitchen one night, which I couldn't explain. So he started to open up his investigations to more than just the UFO phenomenon, or more than just the cryptid phenomenon, or more than just the ghost phenomenon. I think he and Vallée and other thinkers like him began to realize that there seemed to be some broader strangeness that this could very well, or seemed at least to them, to all be a part of.
Right. I just think that people who have not seen a UFO should be very careful on their wording when they're talking, if they're going to be talking about the subject and they've studied all the history and all that stuff's great. And that's awesome. I don't know half the things Steve or Horace know, or Susie knows about, their topics, their favorite topics, because you guys are historians. You really get into it. I'm more into the ground level, the witnesses, the sightings, and I so many of them just get beat up on a daily basis, unintentionally. I know it's not intentional, but unintentionally by people looking for all these skeptical, maybe they did, maybe they read this, maybe they did that. It's just so insulting to people.
So
it hurts them so deep.
I talk to witnesses a lot myself. I go out and I talk to people. I've witnessed things myself as well. I think, yes, it's insulting to imply that they are, well, obviously it's insulting if it's implied that they're lying, or
just crazy, crazy.
Yeah, to say, maybe it was a bear, right? Maybe it was a bear, but I think most people know what a bear looks like if they're out in the woods all the time and stuff like that. But when you're talking about the kind of the more high strangeness stuff like Mothman, stuff like Pukwudgies, it probably even, I'm not a UFO person, but I think those can maybe fit into this too. I think people want to know, what is this? Why did I see it? And they want to hear it's helpful to talk through different theories, like people like Keel and Vallée have had about, where these things are coming from.
Sure. I think that's all good.
Yeah.
I think that's all good, but not saying words like confabulation. It sounds like they fabricated it.
No,
that's
not at all. You're misinterpreting it.
Well, I realize, but it's just confabulation means you made it up, or you had something implanted into your brain by some other source.
No, you're wrong. I just
explain it, Steve. But by the way, I'd like to debate this stuff. It's good to debate it. It's healthy. So go ahead.
Dino is chastises me and vice versa when we get talking about many of these
This
topics.
is what it's all about.
I'm the anti-scientist. I'm the Fortean, and everybody forgets who likes Charles Fort, that Fort despised science. So there's all these people who say they're Forteans and actually love science. It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, I just want to...
So now explain the confabulation, how I'm wrong on that.
Can I just throw, but before I throw it back to Steve, to say that I'll give you, this might be an example. There's been an adaptation of my PhD dissertation I've been working on for a while between films, and eventually I'll get it finished. But there's something I talk about in that book, which I didn't talk about in my dissertation. I kind of use this, I guess, allegory for people who have an experience with the other. And I have had an experience with the other. When I was a child, I had regular bedroom visitations, which were quite frightening, whatever they were. We won't go into that now. But my example is, if a child was playing on their front lawn and a bus pulled up in front of them, we've lost Doug. I don't know.
No, I'm here.
Okay, good. Because it was mainly you. I was probably telling you. Most of my audience have heard this story before. If you were playing in your front lawn as a child, and like a creeper van pulled up, and out of the window a harlequin or somebody dressed as a clown hung out and said, "Hey, my name's Funbo the Clown. I'm going to Disneyland for the greatest party of the year, and I've got puppies and kitties and candy in the back. Jump in, kid. We're going to have a great time." Now, if the child jumped into that van, the child would be in a very dangerous situation, right? If for whatever reason that child actually got away and later told his parents he was abducted by Funbo the Clown, and Funbo and the parents told the police, and the police talked the child and the parents, the police wouldn't go, "We've got to go and find Funbo the Clown who lives in Disneyland, so let's go over to Anaheim because that's where this person said it was from, and it's a clown called Funbo." They would know instantly that this child has been manipulated and lied to, and what it was shown wasn't the reality of its experience. Now, obviously, to your point, Doug, to tell that child there's no such thing as Funbo the Clown, you invented all of this, you've just made it up in your head, would be incredibly traumatizing to that child for the rest of its life. But alternatively problematic for that child psychologically is to agree with that child and say, "There is a Funbo the Clown. We think he lives in Disneyland, just like you said, and we're going to go and search Disneyland for Funbo the Clown to prove that you're right." So I think what happens with the paranormal often is somebody has an experience. Some people are dismissive and say, "Well, there's no such thing as Bigfoot, just like we know there's no Funbo the Clown. So you're obviously dreaming it." Or it's alien abduction's more my wheelhouse. So to say somebody, "We know there's no aliens, you were never abducted," that's traumatic on one level. Equally problematic, though, is to tell the person, "Well, we know that they're greys from the planet Zeta Reticuli and that they're coming here doing, a breeding program, and that you're probably having hybrid children, and that this is all part of some plan to colonize the planet," as some alien abduction researchers a la Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, for example, do. So, or Bud Hopkins has passed now, but he did that. So my point is, when a witness has an experience with something which is fundamentally unknowable, in the paranormal space, where I'm very suspicious of what the phenomenon is showing us, how much it is based in our normal day-to-day reality. It doesn't mean it's any less important. In fact, in some ways, it's more important. But to either dismiss the witness, which is what I think you're saying, Doug, is a problem. I totally agree. But to also double down and to tell them, "Well, we know we know the aliens from Zeta Reticuli are coming here and harvesting, a reproductive liquids from you." So
Yeah.
that's problematic. That's equally problematic, and I think that's the problem most of the paranormal field have fallen into. And I think both of those things are as problematic for.
Well, I think that has a lot of bearing. Like David Jacobs would talk about the way he would, hypnotize abduction,
right.
Whatever the name is for them, abduction victims.
Yeah.
He would be very careful that he wasn't getting confabulated by implanting thoughts in their brain and so on. Because to me, I've always thought it as just a fabricated memory, period.
Well, I think the problem is that they say that, but I don't know if that's true. For example, I met a woman when the same trip I talked to Bud Hopkins at some length, who I used her quotes in my dissertation, although I didn't point the finger at Bud because he was still alive. And she told me, you know, she was a major she was a major part of Hopkins' research, and she said she knew she'd had all these experiences, but she could never remember what the entities looked like. And I had a tape recording, and so I quoted it directly from a tape recording of my dissertation. And the quote was, but he pushed and he pushed and he pushed, and I eventually told him what he wanted to hear, that they were little gray men with big black eyes, but she had no recollection of that. And I think David Jacobs, who was his partner, Jacobs is still alive, is equally problematic. Jacobs, I think now has in many ways been in the Me Too era, probably rightfully so, thrown overboard because these communications came out with a female abductee where he was asking her to send him, we won't go into details because it's a family show, but undergarments and to wear certain devices and to do all this crazy, non-appropriate to talk in front of an audience things. Also, Bud Hopkins' wife or ex-wife, Carol, wrote a piece saying that she thought that Bud Hopkins and Jacobs and all of those people, they had no understanding about any and I had this in my own experience talking to Bud, who was lovely with me. I had breakfast with him, a lovely man, but he didn't want to hear any comparative analysis. So she said, what always amazed me is that they had no understanding with, I'm paraphrasing her, but with any of the traditions that had become before alien abduction. And I found that exactly the same when I was talking to Bart. I said, aren't there any comparisons with like fairy faith in this kind of stuff? And he said, well, there's no rainbows or pots of gold at the end of, you know, an abduction story. And I'm thinking, in fairy faith, you're talking about a Lucky Charms commercial, right? There aren't many stories in fairy faith where there's a rainbow and a pot of gold. Like, I'm sure there are some where there's a pot of gold, right? But for him to just dismiss the comparative analysis that similar things to what you're talking about have been recorded for hundreds and hundreds of years outside of a scientific extraterrestrial interpretation. So my point is, I think those researchers brought so much of their own belief system and baggage to the people they were encountering that they in turn, often under hypnosis, which, you know, that is when you can get confabulation, by the way, Doug. That isn't just a witness like somebody you encounter who saw a Bigfoot in the woods. This is somebody laying on a couch who doesn't have a great memory.
I've been involved in many hypnotisms with witnesses.
Do you think they're problematic?
I just did a whole bunch of them, huh?
Oh, okay. Do you think they're problematic as far as the memories, or?
I don't know. I'm not the hypnotist. I deal with professionals that I hire and pay to deal with witnesses.
Well, I do know that the very first hypnoregression in the alien abduction space, which was Betty and Barney Hill's, a psychiatrist who did the hypnotic work on there. Benjamin Simon was his name, and it's in Curtis Fuller's Interrupted Journey, that first abduction book. That scientist didn't think that they'd been abducted. That therapist, or he was actually a psychiatrist too, not just a psychologist. He thought that this wasn't something that happened to them. He thought
the last big thing we did, it was like 8 different witnesses that was here done in my home. The therapist never once mentioned anything about Bigfoot to any of them, just brought them back to a certain day. That's it. That was all that was done. Okay. And the amount of trauma that I witnessed of people screaming, crying out of fear, and it was just really amazing. I filmed it all. It'll be in Legitimate Science.
Wow.
It's not, it really gets to you. When I've watched, grown men in the military crying and screaming based on an experience and reliving fear that they had and suppressed, not based on anything Bigfoot. Bigfoot was never mentioned. They just would go through and describe, whatever. There's no confabulation. This was real trauma that people had experienced. And I'm not saying there is nobody that confabulates. I'm just saying there has to be, those words are said so loosely and so often.
I hear it so often about the person confabulating, the experience imprinted on them. involved confabulation.
Yeah, well, let's. I'd love to hear more from you, Steve. Now I'm gonna shut up and listen.
I'm good. I'm just gonna. We're just not defining terms the same way, so I'm just gonna let it go.
But I just know that when you see something, you see something. It's not like I didn't see it because I wanted to see it. It was there. I didn't want to see a winged creature. Trust me, it really hurt my life.
Right.
There's no willingness to want to do it. I would love to just have it forgotten, but it happened. I know what wings look like, and I know what size kind of is, and I know it didn't look like anything I've ever seen in a zoo or in any of my wildlife studies. It just didn't fit. What we saw was real. Now, I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it came from a portal or the Matrix, or that stuff's all fine. We don't know that.
Right.
But God Almighty did nothing to do with our imagination. At the same exact time, the trauma that I deal with a vet still every day is not fun. And so for the people that have never seen anything, just be aware there are people that are very traumatized, and that your words are very, very powerful. And you may not realize that because you haven't seen anything. You don't know what it feels like, to have something really, really odd happen to you, or witness something really odd. And that's what I'm saying. That's the point I want to get across. And I'm never apologetic from putting that, or whether I'm talking to the people from the Skeptical Inquirer, whatever. I've had some great conversations, but man, they use a lot of words real loose, and it bothers me. And I think they should take a little more responsibility, and they're throwing out a lot of really harsh terms on people.
Well,
But I know they don't mean to. They're not trying to hurt people. I know that, but they're just not kind of aware of how powerful, because they are in a position of authority. Steve, you're in a position of authority because you're an expert in this.
Well, I know
Horace, you're an astronomer.
No, I'm knowledgeable. I don't know that anybody's an expert on things like
people look up to you. If they watch, they look up to you, and they see you on, in the media, and I've seen you before in the media. They're going to take your words to heart.
Well, I know Steve didn't mean.
No, of course that. I definitely don't think anybody
but
would do anything on purpose.
I think we should probably let Steve say what he means by.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, that's absolutely, because it's important. Because I know Steve sits in a very similar camp, probably the same camp as I do. So yeah, Steve, you should talk a little bit about what you mean.
Well, John Keel believed that a lot of these people that they're having real experiences. It was coming from. They weren't imagining things. It was coming from some outside source. He even thought that possibly some of the Men in Black encounters weren't real physical encounters. They were illusory, not hallucinations. And that many of this, that there is his idea of this co-creation. There's a lot to support that when you look at the way these experiences fall down, the way they manifest. Again, if you go through the very history, these things seem to follow the general collective belief system that's present at the time. There's always anomalies and so forth, but it doesn't mean that people are lying or making up stuff themselves.
Right. What did Keel mean by what was the word?
He didn't think that necessarily when people were having these experiences, they were necessarily real physical experiences where men in black suits would show up and harass people. Sometimes that really did happen, but some of these things are very dreamlike. They don't always fall in place like real physical events, yet something's happening and they're really experiencing something.
Yeah, well, these big words like illusory or
it's not a big word. It
is. It's not a common word. It isn't a common word people hear all the time. And what does the word say? Pronounce it correctly, Steve. I can't.
I believe it's illusory.
Illusory. Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you I could go interview 1,000 people and nobody would know what that meant. They just wouldn't know. And so these words and terms that Keel may have used or whoever need to be explained. So when you say that, you really that's what I'm getting at. You need to explain what do you really mean by that word? Because not everybody knows it. We all use these things real loose. And I don't use any big words because I'm a high school dropout. I don't use any big words.
Well, I only went to college for a little while, so I only know a few big words.
I don't know anything.
A 4-year course, boy, I'd be a big deal.
I'm not successful because I had a high education. I'm just successful because I worked my butt off. And I just know that a lot of these big words that I do hear skeptics use all the time.
I know, but don't imprint big words on me, whatever you do.
No. And I don't really know how somebody who's interested in the paranormal or mysteries is even interested if they haven't seen anything. I've always wondered that. How are they?
No, I've always been intrigued.
What's driving their interest? Is it a belief, or is it a non-belief?
It's just a fascination with the unknown.
Yeah.
Well, it's. I've looked up a long time. I've seen things that I couldn't explain, but not to the odd level. So that when I approach the question, if it's something like related to the paranormal, ghosts, I don't know anything more than the next person. If it comes even to swamp gas, I don't know more about swamp gas than the next person. If it's something that might be approached from a physical standpoint or an astronomical standpoint, then I might know something. So I tend to ask questions that are kind of restricted to that area. Like when I asked you, did you hear was there any sound going?
That was a good question.
Was it moving? Well, the way you had already brought up that it wasn't moving like the way you would expect the ordinary physical objects to be moving. If you had a camera or something, you could try to see what kind of spectrum it had and something like that. You almost never have that info. But
I was in a CIA. I was in a CIA plane called a heliplane once, and we had to land into Hubbard had bought, and it's Stanley Hubbard, who owns ABC affiliate here in town, flew me. He wasn't the pilot. It was a pilot that used to work with the CIA. Flew me into O'Hare. And I had to get there really quick because I was bringing Siberian crane eggs. We had to rush these eggs to Russia before they hatched. So it was a big urgent thing. Get me to Chicago. Get me to Russia really quick. And so we went in there, and the only thing I can say that was similar with wings outstretched, and I still don't really know how the heliplane works, but brought me over, and they basically go above the runway, and they just drop right out of the sky in a plane with the wings, quite big wings too. I'm not sure how that was. I think they tilt or angle, but we just dropped straight down, and that's what this did. Was up high, and it just dropped straight down without stretched wings, which is why I say it kind of seems like it defied physics, because normally you'd have to glide in, right? If your wings are outstretched.
I imagine in that case there was a mechanism behind it, maybe not one they want people to know about. I did spent some time with people at Los Alamos and other places that have hinted at things that are not publicly known, but they haven't told me any really of the weird stuff. And they were all very good closed mouths, so they wouldn't have if they knew it. Even if I knew them, they wouldn't break security rules to tell me anything. But it's you would think the physical part of it, the part I am more trained in, you'd think that part could be addressable. Maybe these it may not yield answers, but it could be addressable if there
One-
was enough
one
money
quest-
and resources.
One question that I don't know if it's talked about enough is certain people might attract things, just
Right.
attract it, not from their brain, but they're attracting it somehow. It's drawn to them like steel to a magnet.
Multiple experiences, people who have multiple.
Yeah.
And this is something else Kill talked about, right, Steve?
Well, me and Yvette have seen, we saw the one Bigfoot up on 169 drying off. We saw one here about 3 years ago over, not terribly far from where we live in this area where there's a lot of sightings. And we just saw one walking along the road and then ducked into a kind of a big swampy area. But it was unmistakable what we saw. It was in broad daylight, completely out in the open. And it was massive and it had really unique kind of hair. We know what we saw. I mean, it was shocking, but we're both like questioning, why have we seen these things? And
I've
especially when
complained
we're
to
together.
I've complained to Dean the opposite, that if there are people who are sensitives, I seem to be an insensitive, in the sense that I've been to supposedly haunted houses and things, and
Nothing's ever
nothing
happened.
when I'm there, and so
I had a guy I knew for many years, a guy I did a lot of scientific projects with. His name was Alan, his first name. He was also a pilot. He was into astronomy. I can go on and on. He was also an environmental scientist. And often I would use him for testing certain samples. Well, he had never seen a UFO in his whole life, never on his flights. He does a lot of night flying. Nothing. I just said, hey, Alan, I tell you what, one thing we've never done, let's get together, see if that changes. So I invited him over. I said, he doesn't live like really far, but he lives about 4 hours north of me. I said, if you come into the Minneapolis airport, give me a call, come out, we'll hang out for a little bit, and maybe you'll get a chance to see a UFO. Because me and Yvette see him all the time. So he goes, okay. And he comes out and he gives me a call and he comes out. He isn't even here 5 minutes. And he sees his first UFO and he knows what he's seen. He's first thing he does, of course, he checks all of the apps, the airport apps, this apps. I mean, he does everything he could possibly do. And I'm telling him what's going to happen to this UFO. And everything I said happened, and it comes right to us. And then it buzzed off, and he goes, holy crap. He goes, I'm 58, blah, 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 and I've never seen, I come over to your house 5 minutes, and I have this sighting. And he was just dumbfounded. And then he died about a week later.
Oh,
died of a heart
I was going to
attack.
say, well, I'd like to go join you on that, but no,
not
so much.
He just dropped dead on the sidewalk one day coming out of the gym. But he was a very dear friend of mine. We did a lot of work together. I depended on him for so much, and he was just a wonderful, open-minded guy. But he had never seen a UFO ever. He even says, Doug, not only do I fly at night, every night when it's warm, I can sit in my hot tub. It's one of my things I like to do, out in his backyard and look at the stars. And he was actually putting in the time. And he still had never seen anything. At 58, and all the flying and all of the, the stuff, he's an outdoorsman.
That's a lot of hours, yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought I'd bring that story up. So that kind of made me think, well, maybe it is the people. It could be who you're with or whatever. But he either imagined everything we all did. Everybody that was there imagined everything, or he saw his first UFO. I'm just talking about, I know what he saw. But yeah, it really shocked him.
I think Keel talked about people possibly being like umbrellas. So if you were in their field, you were more likely to experience something as well. If you were with somebody who was a multiple experiencer.
Yeah, I don't know. No idea, but the people who do see things, and we're not talking about a UFO that was like some vague light in the sky. This thing came right to us silently, and then went over the roof of the house after it was done whatever it did to us. And it was clearly a UFO. And I said, that's what I'm telling you. We see these. Like, we can hardly go a night out here and not see them. And yes, we have film, and yes, we have videos of them. And I'm good at what I do. I get perspective on things. I show it moving against the roof and go, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of people just film lights in the sky.
Yeah. If you zoom in and you just get the light, you can't
Yeah.
tell what's going on. Yes,
I don't do
exactly
that.
right.
I mean, I once filmed a UFO over Forest Lake out my window because I had a 3-story home on the lake, overlooking Lake 3 on Forest Lake. And one night I come up, I'm going to bed, and I see about 5 lights on the above the lake, real close to the lake, not maybe up 300 feet. And I was like, holy crap. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got a pro camera, a television camera downstairs. I'll go grab my tripod and the camera, and, plus I got a huge zoom lens on it,
Uh-huh.
And I think it was do you remember the what were they called? They were Canon, was it LX2? Dean, does that ring a bell? Canon LX2. It had a big, huge lens on it. And so I go down and grab it. I'm out of breath. I get upstairs. I set up the tripod and I'm filming. I'm zoomed in on it like nobody else has ever zoomed in on it. Like, it's still better than any of the UFO footage I've ever seen. And I'm zooming in, and my wife is going, move. I want to look. I want to see it too. And so she's looking in the thing and watching it. And all of a sudden she freaks out because she's another UFO came out of it. I'm like, whoa. So I said, let me see. We're kind of fighting over the viewfinder. And so I'm filming, and then I see one spinning, comes right out of the thing, and it goes and it takes off. And then I film 2 more coming into it. They're spinning, these little smaller objects. And I don't know how big the ship was, but I'm estimating it was well over 200 feet wide. And so I filmed that whole sequence, and it's on high 8 with a Canon LS2 camera, I believe, LS2. And so I get this great footage. Did I make up what I filmed? I don't know. I don't think so. It was really there. If I wouldn't have filmed it, did I make it up? I don't think so. It was, 5 lights, and I wouldn't have seen the details of the small craft coming out of it. But we've had so many, that kind of started a whole life. And that was, I think I had met Stan Friedman and showed Stan. He was real impressed with it, but he didn't seem like he wanted to do anything with it to make it public, which I thought was odd.
You told me an interesting Stan Friedman story once before.
Oh God, I can tell you lots of them.
The one where you got a phone call from him, and what the ID of the phone call was.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, and I always wondered about that. It would come in from Bangor Air Force Base. And I always thought, well, why? Because I had an early caller ID system, right? And me and Stan were friends. I was interested in doing a doc, not necessarily about him, but a really good UFO doc, right?
Right.
And one that kind of like I did with Legend Meets Science, puts a lot of science to the mystery.
That'd be great if you did.
And he was willing to, share everything from his, like even footage for the first time of a nuclear powered rocket. So he had a lot of neat things. And there was one time, oh God, I shouldn't even tell this story. There was one time he left me a slide roll that I don't think I was supposed to see. And to this day, I'm happy to tell anybody in private about actually 2 things that happened that way. And I don't think I was supposed to see what I saw. I swear to God, I don't think he intentionally left those with me or whatever, but these stories will blow your mind. Actually, scary.
Or it could have been intentional if he was disinfo agent or something.
I don't know. I don't know.
Is
I
it-
mean,
is it-
I don't necessarily trust anybody. You know what I mean? Because anybody can act like your buddy.
Has anybody here seen Age of Disclosure, which is dropped on?
I have not seen it yet. I looked at it today and I thought, ooh,
Mm.
$19. Nice.
Yeah, no,
I
watched
haven't seen it all. I have heard about it from your program, Dean.
Yeah, Ian, Stephen, and I did a
I'm
kind
sure
of
it's amazing.
a lead up to. It's interesting. I'm when I watched it, I was suspicious there was intentional programming in there. Maybe I'm paranoid, but I feel like there was intentional messaging in there. Lou Elizondo, I believe, is one of the executive producers for
Yeah.
starters, and he's clearly probably the person who's most prominent. Followed by him would be Hal Puthoff, who's a very interesting character. But there was I don't know. I mean, I watched it. I was interested in it. I think anybody interested in this topic should watch the film. It's beautifully produced. I mean, it's well put together. It's
Yeah,
well
I'm
shot,
sure.
but it did seem to be a very, intentionally leading you along a path kind of documentary, pointing you at, what the answer was. So that's probably all.
Yeah, how can we ever know what's disinformation? Who's, Stan, what bugged me about Stan, I love Stan. He was always so nice to me. And we were, he was always available. And, we traveled around the country together. And I can tell you, but then I always thought, why doesn't he talk like at his lectures? Why doesn't he talk about the Phoenix Light incident? Why doesn't he update his talk? Why does he only talk about the Benny and Barney Hill and, those kinds of things? And he those things, he always kind of ignored me on my advice. Like, why don't we we even flew to Phoenix to investigate that whole Phoenix Lights thing. And
wow, I didn't know.
met with witnesses, and we did all sorts of stuff. But I always wondered why he didn't update his lecture with new information, I don't know. I guess I don't do lectures for a living. He kind of did.
Yeah,
So,
I saw him I only ever met him briefly in Australia when he came to do a lecture there, and it was sold out. It was in a major auditorium.
yeah.
It's pretty rare to be able to sell out a lecture, but he was somebody who could sell out a
Oh
lecture.
my God. He did a lecture at my house one night. I'll tell you this really weird coincidence. It was a weird day. So Stan's at my house and we're just kind of, I don't know why we were just kind of bored. And I go, oh, I should probably call my buddy over at the radio station, over at WCCO radio and get you on over there. And so I call him up. And Stan had mentioned earlier it was the Ronnie Zamora incident.
Socorro.
Yeah, Socorro incident anniversary. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Well, it gives us something to talk about. So I called my buddy who was a DJ at the CCO. We go over there. He said, yeah, bring Stan. It'll be awesome. So we run over to downtown Minneapolis and we go there and blah, blah, blah. And we're talking about general stuff. And suddenly Stan goes, yeah, it's the anniversary of the Lonnie Zamora incident, blah, blah, blah. And the guy who's interviewing Stan, now think of the coincidence I'm going to tell you. He goes, I was there.
What?
Stan's going, what? He goes, oh, yeah, I was there right when everything's still burning. And Stan's like, what? And he goes, this is live on the radio.
God.
And he goes, how could you have been there? And he goes, I was there with my sister, my dad, and my mom. We were on vacation. And we saw the smoke and the stuff coming up. And we saw a policeman and we went there. My dad went there to see if he needed any help, if Lonnie needed help.
Good grief.
And I'm like, well, that's kind of an important find there, Stan. and I thought it was odd because Stan never interviewed him after that. So it was just, you only have so much time on the radio. It just struck me as kind of a red flag.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think Friedman, as well respected as he is,
He is.
He pushed an awful lot of things which to me have always been the intentional disinformation that we know came from specific sources. Like
Right.
he wrote a book analyzing the MJ-12 documents and saying they were real. But the MJ12 documents come via William Moore and Jamie Shandera. William Moore, we know, was an asset of essentially the Air Force intelligence, right? Operation, whatever it's called.
Well, wouldn't they try to turn somebody who was that prominent? Like,
well, I'm sure the fact that we know those documents probably came via Richard Doty, who I've had on Talking Weird back on the day, and then that Friedman later was the person who did more than anybody else to literally write a best-selling book on that the MJ12 documents are real. But we can trace their movement through Shandera, William Moore, to Richard Doty. We almost know it was some type of weird Air Force operation. So that was such a big part of Friedman's, probably he must have spent several years where that was his main focus, where he was really pushing the MJ12 documents. And I don't even know how many books he wrote. That was certainly one of his main books. But we almost certainly know now, whatever the reality of Roswell and everything else is, we know where they came from. They came from very suspicious sources.
I just threw a comment up, Dean.
Sure.
It says, Doug, like I said Sunday, some of these people get 2 paychecks, not just one. And I am not accusing Stan of being a double agent or anything. I'm just saying during my time that I knew Stan and got to know him so well, there were many red flags. And that's all they can say they were, red flags. And they just make you go, It
is fascinating. Because I've never heard anybody else talk about it with the experience that you have with him personally. Like, I've heard people be suspicious of him, but I've never.
Well, I'm highly hyper aware of things, and I just, like most people wouldn't think, oh, why didn't he take this DJ? Because he was there and he witnessed it and want to witness interview even by phone his sister, who was alive and was there too. What did she see? That's kind of important, new witnesses. I just thought it was odd, and there was no follow-up. Like, okay, that's kind of weird.
I had a chance to talk to Stanton Friedman briefly at a Michigan Paracon once. Now, I had read Captured, where he wrote with Kathleen Martin. I had read UFO Dynamics by Bertrand Schwartz, and the interview he did with Betty Hill in Flying Saucer Review.
Right.
And what people don't know is that there were very heavy paranormal overtones connected with this event, especially after the main event. The things that happened to the Hills afterwards were even more bizarre. And even
Can you share, Steve?
Absolutely. If you read Captured by Kathleen Martin, she was present at some of those events. So I met Kathleen. Now, I asked Stanton about, because he co-wrote the book. I said, Stan, what do you think about some of the really stranger aspects of this encounter? And he just said, I don't know. Well, a couple of years later, I was at with Mac Maloney's Military X-Files at the Exeter event. I was sitting next to Kathleen Martin, and I was talking to her about Stanton Friedman. Now, this is after he's gone. And she told me, because Stan never deviated in his talks from the ET idea.
No.
And she said, he was coming around to the paranormal aspect based on her experience and what she knew about Betty and so forth. So that's something people don't know. But if you read the Captured, there are just some very, I won't go into it all, but there's some very, very strange events that happened afterwards. And it's also confirmed by, again, Bertrand Schwartz's book.
Could you just name one of those weird events?
Good Lord. They were experiencing classic haunting phenomena in their house. The clock stopped at the same time when Barney Hill had died. Wow. They suggested to Betty, this was the same man that suggested to them they should seek regressive hypnosis to try and uncover their memories. He said, I think Robert Holman, he said, look, Betty, you had kind of a rapport with this with the leader on this craft. Why don't you try to contact them again to see if you can have another experience through telepathy? Well, nobody really expected anything of it, and she didn't either. But what she would do is go on her back porch at night and send a message out to the aliens we would like to meet again, and so forth. But the thing is, they couldn't come and land there because it was too congested. So they would have had to go to the her parents' house about a half hour away. So apparently she's giving him the location or whatever. She'd go out every night at 9 o'clock for several weeks, again, not expecting anything. And then one day her father called her up and said, Betty, you need to get over here. So she goes over to his house. And he said it would be his sister-in-law living right nearby with the same last name as her parents. One night, and the idea was they were supposed to come to the house, and contact them somehow. But anyway, I don't know exactly what she was putting out there. So they came to the. She woke up one night and saw a bright light and thought maybe it's lightning or whatever. She looks outside and sees a classic UFO, and then she hears a knock on her door, like a knock, 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 and she's petrified because her house is a little bit off the beaten track. She can't imagine who would be coming there. She doesn't get out of bed. So she tells this to her brother-in-law. He tells it to Betty. And so Betty goes back and she sends out another, what I can't imagine what she said. You guys can come all the way from Zeta Reticuli, but you can't find the right damn house. So she does it again. And so a few weeks go by, and apparently her parents have agreed to this, probably not expecting anything. But they're lying in bed one night, and her mother wakes up and hears a knock, knock, knock at the door. Oh, we lost Dean for a minute. Well, wait till Dean comes back here.
That's interesting.
This is all.
That's a great story, Steve.
In the book. Yeah, we'll wait for Dean. This is again captured by Kathleen Marden and Stan Friedman. And again, if you could find the book UFO Dynamics by Dr. Bertold Schwartz, a lot of times it goes to third-party sellers, and it's very, very expensive. But also there was a 3-part interview with Betty Hill, which kind of parallels that was in Flying Saucer Review in the 70s. And they had you've heard of Men in Black. Well, they had Men in Green. They had these. A lot of this was just obviously government intervention or snooping around.
Well, what do you think the Men in Black were, Steve?
Well, let me.
I want to finish. But I want to hear that.
There's more than one answer to that. But they would get these guys in green coveralls coming saying, "We got to read your meter," and sometimes 2 would come in the same day or several a week. And so she checked out and found out that the actual guys that checked their meters wore blue coveralls. So you had some people snooping around and messing around with them. Mm-hmm. But wish Dean could get back here. But anyway.
He's coming. Okay. Steve.
I know we having some. Here we go. So anyway, to continue that, she's lying in bed, hears the knocking, and is petrified. She doesn't move. She finally wakes up her husband. And so they hear this knocking, and then all of a sudden there's this huge explosion sound. And they forget all about aliens coming to visit. And he thinks maybe the furnace is blown up or something, runs downstairs, checks out through the house, everything's intact. And just like his sister-in-law, they did not answer the door. Now, if this is true, my theory is that this might have been more like a poltergeist kind of an experience rather than an actual alien, a Zeta Reticulan knocking at the door. I mean, can't these guys just teleport or something? So, this is some of the bizarre stuff that happened and just even a Bigfoot connection with Betty Hill.
Really? I've never heard any of these.
Well, this was, I forget exactly what area it was, but she was out with a friend of hers somewhere where there had been reports, and they actually heard the growling, the commotion, and they didn't actually see it. There's another incident where she owned some property. Her nephew and niece went to camp on it. They heard some strange noises. Dean, you've heard the car door slamming and metal on metal in some of these paranormal instances.
Right.
Well, they heard that.
Doug Paulides talks about that as well with some disappearances.
Right. And also, And the next day they found kind of a weird Bigfoot print, but it was one of the 3-toed ones, like Stan Gordon found in southwestern Pennsylvania. So anyway, there's much more to this, but it's just
I'm going to have to get that book.
Get the book, and if you can find you can get some of those flying saucer reviews for a few bucks each from Amazon. So if you can find the Schwartz interviews, that gives you some even more detail.
Yeah,
but
eBay can be a great source for old books too.
But these are just electronic. You can get them on the Kindle or whatever and get them right away.
Well, what I noticed so much about Stan, he stuck to a narrative, and that was it. There was no changing, and it was a good narrative. It was very pro UFO, and I was very happy that he was doing that. But I just often wondered why the narrative never budges. And he'd been doing that same narrative since forever, like, way, way back. God, I would imagine, does anybody know when he first started lecturing? That was probably in the 70s.
Yeah, I would have guessed in the 70s too.
And he never missed that narrative. It was exact.
I actually saw him on a local television show back. It was either late 60s or early 70s. It was called the Lou Gordon program in the Detroit area. I don't know if you remember seeing that, Horace, at all. But he was a mostly political guy. But he had Stanton Friedman on, Philip Klass, and Betty Hill in the studio one night.
Philip the skeptic.
Yeah, oh yeah, the nasty guy.
Oh yeah, he wasn't too nice.
He had a horrible disposition. So,
I did meet him.
did?
He was not pleasant.
It wasn't even good to you.
Well, he would tell stories that were private stories about people that shouldn't have been told. Was what I thought. But I was interested in he was interesting, but he didn't. He actually was at an event on our campus. I met him there, but he had his story too all set up to go. I don't.
Yeah, I'm sure that his narrative never changed either. It just stayed the same, and that bugged me about Stan. I'm sorry, it did. I'm not afraid to say it. That bugged me. It raised red flags. Like, why doesn't he talk about some of the Phoenix Lights was a huge incident. Hello. Let's get it into the lecture here. There's footage. There's witnesses. Me and Stan together interviewed witnesses. And it was fantastic. Had been seen by air, by the governor, saw the damn thing. What else do you want? It was a great thing, and yeah, it could have been flares, I guess, but been pretty much proven it wasn't, because it blocked out the stars. I don't think flares block out stars.
It always amused me, though, that to go back to the start of this thread, that Socorro ended up being near where the VLA was built.
What is the VLA?
The Very Large Array Radio Telescope, the ones you see in the movie Contact.
Big satellite dish
on the plains there. Of course, it's a very isolated place from radio interference.
That's why I've been out there. I actually went there. One of my best friends from Sydney, very dear friend of mine, Bridget Hive, you're watching. Her husband was an astrophysicist who moved to the New Mexico University at Socorro because he was working on that array. So that's why I've got to go out.
Is that array right where Lonnie saw?
Yeah, very close. Yeah, it's the same. Socorro.
Well, when you say close, do you mean a mile? Do you mean 50 feet? Do you mean?
I don't know. It's to the west of the town. A ways, but I don't know where the Socorro.
But the fact it's in the same town of Socorro.
Well, Socorro out west being the closest town, but they deliberately put the antennas away from any buildings that they could tell about. There's also a nice astronomical lyceum between the VLA and the city now, with a lot of historical telescopes. Yeah. Just for those who are interested in telescopes. But it's a beautiful place to visit. And if you do get out there, you go from the city, you drive up into the mountains, and you go west and to the plains, and that's where the BLA is. Where
Why do you think? Why do you think Lonnie got so much attention? I mean, he got attention from NASA, from I believe the FBI, and so many of these three-letter agencies. Why do you think that? Because there's been other cops that have seen UFOs and creatures. Why do you think Lonnie got so much attention?
I don't know. Dean may have a better idea.
Dean?
I think part of the reason was that he was a police officer, so he's somebody of a degree of respectable authority. And there were other contact reports from other police officers at the time. What's the one, Steve, with the
or was it because they could easily come up with a parallel story of NASA testing some lander that's right. That's what I'm pointing at. To me, I think they gave him that attention to debunk
that doesn't make any sense, that lander story. It's not how the lander was arranged, not how it would be worked. The lander had to be it just doesn't make any sense.
But it even put doubt in my mind. I remember that story. It just put doubt in my mind. I'm like, okay.
Well, there were many stories like that at the time. If you remember APRO, the Lorenzens, they chronicled all kinds of close encounters of the third kind, landings, seeing with some kind of entity in conjunction with the craft. Not really, they weren't really getting into abductions at that time, but these were kind of, well, I don't know if they were plentiful, but there were many that were chronicled. So, and this came about at the same time. So there were, there was the Cisco Grove incident. Of course, Flatwoods was quite a bit before that.
How about the Landrum incident? That was kind of a weird.
That was later. That was like late 70s.
I know NASA debunked that one, tried to debunk it.
But the Lorenzens, the NICAP, Kehoe's organization, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, they would talk about things flying in the sky all day long, but they didn't like to talk about landings, and they really didn't like to talk about the entities. The Lorenzens just steamed full steam ahead, and so did Frank Edwards, really, in some of his anthologies. They covered these interesting cases, and I think Socorro was just one of those. And again, Dean pointed out that this wasn't just somebody they could pass off as a hayseed way out in some country bumpkin or whatever. This was and not that country bumpkins haven't experienced things and are credible as well, but he was a credible police officer that was really stunned by what he experienced.
Did that story, and I don't know this, did that story end up in Blue Book at all?
Probably. The Blue Book, they were in on it. Of course, there was, Hynek was there.
Hynek visited, there's photos of Hynek there, I think.
And Ray Stanford was another one.
What was the official Blue Book conclusion, I wonder?
Oh, no idea.
Gosh, I can't
remember. I got to look it up. I'm going to look it up tonight.
Put it down as one of the unknowns. They did that sometimes.
I want to look it up. I'm just curious.
It's one of the things we forget, though, because so much of ufology, particularly post the hills and post, you're right, Steve, where APRO started looking at these reports, even when NICAP was had a policy of pretty much dismissing any contact reports because of the contactees, people like George Adamski, they thought dirtied the waters. There was a long period where respectable ufology would not look at a report which involved an actual being coming out of the craft. And one of the things I discovered while I've been making the Ray Palmer documentary is that the great early feud of ufology was between NICAP and Raymond Palmer. I didn't even know about this feud. It's been written out of the history books for most parts, and that's an encounter that happened. What triggered it was an encounter that happened in Wisconsin at Eagle River, where Steve will be very familiar with this case, and Doug and Horace, you both might be as well. And that's when Joe Simonton, a farmer, had an encounter with these beings that asked him for water, who came out of a UFO to make pancakes. And it sounds so ridiculous.
It does, yeah.
Ludicrous.
Yep, I'm very familiar.
but the local judge took him seriously, and the local judge happened to be a member of NICAP. So he forwarded these things to NICAP, wasn't happy with his response at all, contacted somebody else who happened to live in Wisconsin, Raymond Palmer. So Raymond Palmer, who had the only newsstand flying saucer magazine at the time in the world, forget about in America, called Flying Saucers, wrote a cover piece, an article which the magazine had a bunch of stuff about this case, but the cover story was essentially saying NICAP didn't do anything and implying that NICAP was probably some kind of intelligence or Air Force front. And it all blew out of the handling of the Joe Simonton case. And I've since gone back and bought I think it was called the UFO Investigator, whatever NICAP's official newsletter was, rare as hen's teeth now. And there's this flame war happening between NICAP and happening between Ray Palmer in the pages of both of their magazines. And it's based over the approach to contact, the approach to how you deal with a story about somebody who said they've seen or had a contact with an extraterrestrial. And it blew out of this weird Joe Simonton case just down the road from me, really.
Well, NICAP didn't get along with anybody, and it was that James Mosley used to love to tweak NICAP. But there's another aspect to the Joe Simonton case. You're familiar with Chad Lewis, an investigator from
Very much so. I love Chad.
Right, and he has been in touch with some people, and I don't know the specifics, but they said that Simonton had other experiences afterwards, but he just shut up because of all the negative publicity he got with the first round of whatever happened there. And it's, there was also an article published in Beyond magazine that judge they published the interview, and I think Barker did too, with Joe Simonton. And the judge again was kind of familiar with it. He knew Simonton apparently and thought he was a credible guy. So, but he did say, kind of tongue in cheek, he said, "Joe, what do these guys look like anyway? Little green men?" And Joe said, "No, Judge, they were kind of swarthy like Italians." And that parallels with stuff that Keel was discovering that he talked about in Trojan Horse,
right?
Where a lot of these landings, this is before the Greys came in and messed up everything. There were landings of people that looked like actually like some of the classic Men in Black reports. They were the people would see these guys, and they weren't maybe terribly sophisticated in the way they presented it. They'd say, "Well, they look kind of European, dark foreign types or whatever," and but they kind of paralleled with the swarthy Italian. And then he pulls out this, and he talked about it in one of his lectures too. General Spaatz, one of the big generals of World War II in 1948, during a press conference, actually said, "There's no truth to the rumor that Spaniards are flying saucers, or that flying saucers are coming from Spain." And the context, the way Keel looked at it, was that perhaps some people were seeing this type of individual or entity or whatever stepping out of these craft. And so you get this bizarre parallel that kind of flows a little bit into, again, some of the alleged Men in Black encounters. So the Simonton, and again, you've got the parallel with like Jacques Vallée and Passport to Magonia. I mean, Simonton is just an updated, if that had happened 100 or 200 years earlier, they would have said Joe had an encounter with the fairies,
Absolutely.
Even though they showed up in a strange metallic chariot.
So strange.
And here they're cooking. He's looking inside this. They're indicating they want water, and they do the exchange with the cookies or pancakes, whatever you want to call them. They're cooking something on a flameless grill in this little craft. This space pod? Don't they have freeze-dried food? Don't they have Tang like the astronauts had? I mean,
well, the best question to ever ask, and I asked like an abductee it was an interview I was doing, but I asked her, if you were saying it, she'd been on these ships all the time. I said, "Well, where do you go to the bathroom? And where do they go to the bathroom?" And I swear to God, she said, "In sawdust." And I just lost it. Yeah. See, that's putting somebody on the spot. That's a great
these guys didn't even have room for sawdust on their tracks.
Anyhow, I mean, who was going to ask such a question? I did.
That's a great question. The answer's great as well. Somewhat telling, I think.
I mean, is that a question anybody ever asks?
No, but people should.
Dr. Frank Strange claimed that he used the bathroom on Valiant Thor's invisible spaceship outside of Washington, D.C., but that's another story.
And what was the restroom like?
Well, I don't know, but they knew he needed. He's the guy that claimed that he met Valiant Thor in the Pentagon. Very strange. The story is crazy, but it could almost be believable. A Valiant Thor was supposed to be a Venusian, by the way, but then and you think, well, God, maybe this guy was a plant. Maybe Frank was telling the truth about this. And then the second part of the story is he goes aboard Valiant Thor's invisible spaceship again on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. And during their conversation, he's got to use the latrine. And they know telepathically this poor guy's got to go. So they tell him where to go. And all I can think of is, remember 2001 when Dr. Haywood Floyd reads the instructions for the zero gravity toilet? I think maybe that was a replay of that.
Roger Williams just said sawdust would be the rarest substance in the universe, and he is absolutely correct.
Yeah, but where do they get their sawdust?
Exactly. Wood would be the rarest. In fact, that's a fact that's been spouted, that wood would be the rarest substance, far more rare than diamonds or gold.
I hadn't thought of that, but you're right.
Yeah.
You know, gentlemen, this has been the longest talking weird. I've never run 2.5
Ask us if we care, Dean.
Do you have any listeners left at this point?
No, I'm sure. There are listeners. I'm impressed.
This might go viral.
It might be the longest talking weird ever. And I couldn't think of of three more knowledgeable gentlemen to have done it with. And Susie, of course, a knowledgeable lady who had to clock out because I
just feel fortunate. Literally, I mean that, Steve and Horace. I really am glad I've met you guys and love to, bring you on and we can just talk about. I'm sure we agree on 99% of everything. And even that, and I'm finding myself going, oh, this woman mentioned sawdust, and she might have been she answered it instantly too, which I thought was weird. She might be absolutely, correct in what she said, or it's, whatever. But where I have a problem is just, and these are not like what I consider witnesses. They're just people that are public that are claiming a lot of, crazy things. I was kidnapped when I was 12 and raised into the space program and, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I mean, who am I to say they're not being forthright? But I tend to raise this. I go by the red flag thing, right? You get so many red flags with me. Eventually I'm going, no, I'm just walking away.
That's why Keel liked the silent contactees, right, Steve? When
yes.
He was fascinated with these people who didn't seek publicity.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to open up on another topic, but for food for thought, the silent contactees parallel the so-called hungry ghosts that Joe Fisher writes about in The Siren Call of the Hungry Ghosts.
I have not.
Yeah, that's a.
What is a hungry ghost, Steve?
There was Joe Fisher was in contact with a medium. Several people were, and over a period of time, they were supposedly contacting dead World War II pilots. A woman supposedly he was in contact with over several generations, and they would get, like the silent contactees, they would get all kinds of information. Some of it was very legitimate. He went to England and Greece to prove that this stuff was right. He found some of it was dead on accurate, and some of it was total BS, just like the trickster aspect of the silent contactees. But we'll have to leave it there, because like Dean said, we can't go on till 4 a.m. and I need my beauty sleep.
Yeah, we can, Dean. Yeah, we can, Dean. I'm just look, you guys don't know what you're messing with. I could do these things. I could be here till 4, and I would enjoy every minute of it. So
I saw somebody in chat say another 3-hour tour, Doug.
yeah, I know. If there wasn't time, I would love to do a 12-hour podcast because I think you all get loosened up even more, and you start
but Doug, after a 3-hour tour, the weather starts getting rough.
Yeah, I know. And our prostates all go, you need to go pee. You need to go pee.
I know somebody that does, but I'm not going to mention his name.
I've been on shows where they have a break so people can go potty break, which is probably the way you would do it. I think it was maybe Texas Front Porch or a show Jason.
Okay, I'm going to propose this, and I will invite you guys, if you're willing to do it, and you can take breaks, to do a long podcast. Dean, would you ever be up for a marathon podcast?
Sure, as long as they've got
get some really great things. You guys are great thinkers, and just get some great conversationalists that, whatever. We'll just let the conversation go any damn direction and let it go till at least midnight.
I've got some fresh sawdust back there.
Yeah, good. So I would propose at least from like 7 at night Central till at least midnight Central.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you guys can drop off if they have to.
No, let's do it while my mother's visiting. So there's somebody. No, because then my daughter can be put to bed by my.
Oh, because
otherwise
your daughter.
Probably from 7 to midnight might be a little.
Yeah, because you were lucky enough to you got the house to yourself tonight.
Well, my mom, no, Chloe ended up getting sick. I don't know if you were there earlier. Yeah, she was meant to go to her mum's. So she was meant to go to her mum's and her grandparents. And I was then going to take my mum out to a restaurant for Thanksgiving. So I didn't have to cook. And then Chloe was sick this morning. And so she didn't go to her grandparents. So she's here. And I didn't get to take my mum out to Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't have any turkey or anything here. So I went to the gas station, got a chicken pizza. I was just to a Thanksgiving dinner, chicken pizza.
Well, that's improvising. That's pretty good. Anyhow, would you guys be willing to do that, Steve?
Sure, if you think I'm helpful.
Oh God, yes, it'd be awesome. It'd be fun.
Look, I make $1 over minimum wage, so
that's good.
Okay.
Oh, it was a great joy having you all here.
Yeah,
thanks to all of you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for
the invite.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And until I get to talk to you all again, gentlemen, hopefully on Doug's marathon podcast episode, which he's working on now.
Well, we're thinking New Year's Eve.
That might be harder. That might be a harder date for me than the end. But I'll drop in.
So we're thinking. We haven't decided yet.
If you do a New Year's Eve, I will definitely drop in. I might be able to stay for the whole thing, but I will definitely drop in.
Okay. We'll figure a date out. Figure a date out.
But yeah, so I was doing my normal wind down until I get to talk to you three gentlemen again, which hopefully will be soon, hopefully on Doug's New Year's Eve podcast, and until I get to talk to everybody else out there, which will be same weird time, same weird network, the Untold Radio Network, next week, Thursday at 9 p.m. Central. Please, happy Thanksgiving and keep it weird.
Good night, all.
Good night.